And we are live. Welcome to the MLB Deeper Dive. It is Monday, April 10th. I am Josh Engleman. I am joined by Adam Scherer. We are brought to you by Bet365. 8-game MLB slate today with no competition. I don't know if there's any other sports going on right now, but there's definitely not NBA, and that's really the only thing that matters. So we can put our full focus onto baseball. Make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you know when everything goes live. Follow us both on Twitter. You can see our Twitter handles underneath our bodies. Adam, what's going on?
How's it going, man? Excited to be talking baseball and not 15-game Easter NBA slates.
Yeah, I mean, that was just a farce of a conversation for an hour for us. It's just didn't matter at all. So much meaningless nonsense. I tried looking at it at one point in time, and I was just like, you know what? I don't even care what any of these results are. I'm like, how do you feel about two gamers? Because we're gonna get a couple of them here in a row.
Basketball?
Yeah.
I don't like them.
Yeah, I don't know how I feel. Like, because it's weird to me. Like, I like Showdown, but in theory, I should like this in the same way.
I don't like Showdown either.
Yeah, that'll do it. Well, we're going to have a lot of Showdown coming up in the near future for the NBA, so buckle up for that. I like the balance of NBA. I've enjoyed the transition of the NBA into the playoffs and the baseball season more this year than I have for any one of the previous years that we've had here. I've really dreaded it. Like, I preferred talking NBA, and like I hated the feel of switching to baseball. This is the first year where it's just like, I'm ready for that switch.
Oh, okay. I'm following now.
Yeah.
I'm always.
And ready. I don't know why. Because I want to watch this NBA playoffs more than any NBA playoffs that have existed in the past.
Yeah, this
4
NBA
years
playoffs should be fun. I still won't really care, but
it's just going to be. There's a path for like really, really fun series.
Yeah, definitely.
Moving forward,
I won't care unless Oklahoma City or Memphis wins the title or the Lakers win the West. Then I will care.
You really need to just place a couple additional bets for more sweats for yourself.
Yeah, probably should, but
Get like an Eastern Conference Finals one, a Western Conference Finals, like I don't know, win a first round, whatever else could exist. Get yourself a couple bullets out there that you can cheer for some random shit. You ready to talk some baseball?
yeah.
Pretty easy slate to talk about. I don't think we have anything too crazy going on. It's so weird to just approach these like when we have an NBA slate. You have no like they're all hell could break loose.
Yeah,
when we go to prep this
like,
MLB, it's just like here's the information.
Yep.
So like my first thought is just like, I wonder how this slate's playing. Well, it doesn't matter. Like as long as there's not supposed to be a hurricane somewhere up the East Coast, like we really rarely have to pay attention to anything. So I say we get into it. First game up for today, Mets and Padres. Four-run implied total for the Mets, 3.5 for the Pods. Max Scherzer going for New York. Yu Darvish going for San Diego. Feel like a pretty real pitching matchup here. We've got Max Scherzer pulling about 25% ownership on DK. We've got Darvish pulling about 13. I guess let's start with Scherzer. How do you see him on today's slate? He is the most expensive pitcher by $800. He's pulling about the same amount of ownership as the other three pay-up options. How do you see him in relationship to those guys? How do you see him in general?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's pretty similar to those guys. He is a little bit more expensive, like you said. We have him with the highest top pitcher score, but it's not by a wide margin. Him, Urias, and Castillo all between 21 and 22%. So not the best matchup against the Padres. You know, you do have a loaded lineup there, but Scherzer, second highest strikeout percentage on the slate last year, only behind Andrew Heaney, who obviously we'll talk about and has his own issues that Scherzer does not have. Scherzer struggled in his first start, but obviously you're not going to read too much into that or into that at all. So yeah, certainly happy to get to Scherzer. There are comparable options that are a little bit less expensive though.
Yeah. Well, in my first run, I got like a little north of the field. I got who about 30% of Scherzer. That seemed totally reasonable to me. I didn't have much else to add there. What do you want to do on the opposite side here with Yu Darvish? 8,400, much more easily rosterable price tag at the very least. Not a fun lineup to face on the opposite side against the Mets. 13% ownership, though, for Darvish. Where do you land for him?
Yeah, I think the lack of ownership is kind of interesting. He's a good pitcher. He's not on the same level as Max Scherzer, but you're still talking a 25, 26% strikeout percentage for him. Not the best matchup either. Like you said, the Mets are a pretty difficult team to strike out. They have a lot of good hitters, but at 13% ownership, I do think he's pretty interesting. Like there's a lot of pitchers on DraftKings today that are pulling, 20, 25% ownership, and Darvish is getting a little bit less than that. So I think he's an interesting, mid-range option. Certainly has a high ceiling just based on his stuff and his ability to get strikeouts.
So Herman Marquez is 8,500. That's $100 more expensive than Darvish. He's not pulling any ownership, and there's a very obvious reason why that's happening.
Yeah.
Andrew Heaney is the next closest guy, $500 cheaper than Darvish, 22% ownership for Heaney. How do you feel between Darvish and Heaney? Obviously, we mentioned you were going to talk about Heaney later, but I'm bringing him into the conversation now.
Yeah. Heaney has the better strikeout stuff. He's got the highest strikeout percentage on this slate by a massive margin. He struck out almost 36% of hitters last year, but he also comes with a very low floor because pretty much if you put the ball in play against him, it's going 400 feet. You're striking out or you're hitting a home run basically. So he can get blown up really quickly. That's not to say Darvish can't. The matchup for Heaney is certainly more appealing against Kansas City. I think he should be more popular than Darvish. I don't know that he should necessarily be almost 2-1.
Okay. Anything else you want to touch on here for Scherzer or for Darvish, other than like they're both good plays?
Yeah, they're both good plays.
That'll work. Talking about the hitting side of this one, probably going to be a little bit more difficult. This is the number 14 and number 15 teams in our top stack tool in terms of just top stack odds. They're 15th and 16th in our stack score. Do you look at either one of those teams and think that you're going to get there with any sort of volume?
Probably not too much. I think I would go to the Mets first. Darvish, not quite the same level of pitcher as Scherzer. When you get him off his game, he can give up some power, more so than Scherzer typically does. So there's nothing that really stands out to me about, either guy like that I'm trying to target. But, Darvish, I think just the not, as good of a pitcher. Last year, he did only strike out 21.8% of righties with a 176 expected ISO. Going back to the start of the 2021 season, pretty even, 27.5% strikeout percentage to both sides of the plate, 162 ISO allowed to lefties, 167 to righties. So I don't think that there's like strong preferences on who you should be looking at from the Mets, other than just the very obvious, like Peter Alonso hits a lot of home runs, Brandon Nimmo, Lindor are good, but there's not like a weakness that really stands out as something you would target in particular for either guy.
Is there any viability to either one of these teams with you trying to get leverage because of ownership? I guess that would be more for the Padres side against Scherzer.
Yeah, I mean, I think anytime the Padres are low owned, especially if the opposing pitcher is getting ownership, there's a case to be made just because you're getting Manny Machado, Juan Soto, Grisham, Bogarts, like such a good lineup here. But also Max Scherzer is a really good pitcher.
Yeah, I have essentially no exposure to the Mets and Pods. It's just very, very low level filler at the top of each lineup. No more than 2 lineups of anybody. So that's kind of where I expect it to be. Really hope the Mets and the Padres aren't the offensive explosion for today. Otherwise, I have no chance of winning any money. I have nothing else here.
Yeah.
We move it on to my Atlanta Braves, 4.9 run implied total, taking on the Cincinnati Reds, 3.6 runs for the Reds. Bryce Elder going for Atlanta, Graham Ashcraft going for the Reds. 30% ownership coming into Elder here, 6,600. Is he pulling a little bit too much here, or do you like him as a value play because the Reds are awful?
I think he's pulling a little bit too much, just relative to other pitchers in his price range that look pretty similar. He's solid. You know, we got 10 games from him last year, 9 starts, about a 21% strikeout percentage. The Reds aren't any good, as you mentioned. He's solid here. You have a 3.5 implied run total for Cincy. It's just that, you know, is he really that much better? Like, he's pulling 29% ownership. You have Jose Suarez getting like 1/3 of that for $300 more. Zach Gallen also getting a bunch of ownership in that price range, and I think, you know, deservedly so. It's just, you know, probably a little bit more ownership than he should be getting. On FanDuel, this isn't as much of a conversation. He is still pulling 14% ownership at 8,300 there. With it being a one pitcher site, I am kind of surprised that ownership number is as high as it is when you don't have any ownership coming into, or you have less ownership, I should say, coming into guys like Darvish, Castillo, Urias, but they are, you know, a little bit more expensive. So I get why Elder's getting some ownership there.
Do you have any interest in Ashcraft at the opposite side? $400 more expensive than Bryce Elder, unowned.
Yeah, that one's tough for me. He has good stuff. He averages like 97.5 miles per hour on his cutter. It just hasn't translated into strikeouts so far in his career. He's done a good job limiting power, but you have a relatively good Atlanta lineup. The top of it, you know, more so than the bottom, but it's just the strikeouts haven't been there for him. I have a hard time wanting to get to him against the Braves.
Jared, I don't know what your reference is, but someone throwing their slider more than their fastball this season is it's a pretty small sample. It's April 10th.
Yeah. And I don't know who he's talking about.
I assume it's Elder, but, you know, it's...
If he means one start. Yeah, I mean, Ashcraft threw his slider more than his cutter in this first start, but...
We're going to need more than a game.
It also had a 5% swinging strike rate.
What do we want to do here with bats? And I think it's pretty clear that we need to start on the Atlanta side. They are 6th in our top stack tool, 10th in value, 8th in stack score. Only person pulling double-digit ownership right now is Ronald Acuna at 12%. This is a team, and like I bring on the homer comment. I guess I deserve it. I'm fairly interested here in the Atlanta stack at basically no ownership.
Yeah, I'm there with you. Ashcraft so far, you know, has done a very good job limiting power. Going back to the start of last season, 156 expected ISO to righties, 197 actual ISO, so ran a little bit bad there. Basically no power to lefties, sub 100 actual ISO, sub 100 expected ISO. But the Braves, particularly the top part of this order, are, you know, a very high upside lineup. I like playing them whenever they're not popular just because you get a nice combination of power upside, stolen base upside. Obviously, Acuna is great. Sean Murphy gives you power at a weak catcher position. Albies gives you plenty of upside at a relatively weak second base position. The bottom of the order is pretty inexpensive. It's also not very good, but it's inexpensive, helps you balance out the Acuna, Olsen, Riley salaries. So at low ownership, I'm with you as far as going to the Braves and just, you know, taking my chances against Ashcraft.
Yeah, that's unfortunately for me. I think I'm going to have Atlanta once again today, but this time the ownership seems to be on my side. I've got a lot of these guys up and down the line, and I'm cool with it. I have a little bit less so of the Cincinnati Reds, and it's not because I'm getting to Elder. It's just because this team stinks.
Yep.
Do you have any interest in going to the Reds because of Elder's ownership? I mean, now we're talking about a $6,600 pitcher. We're talking about 30% ownership here. Does that make the Reds at all appealing to you?
A little bit, I guess, just because Elder certainly isn't an ace or, the type of pitcher that you just can't take hitters against. They do suck, like you said, but you have, India's a decent second base option. Stevenson gives you a catcher with power. You have left-handed bats in Friedel, Fraley, Vossler, Will Benson that can do some damage. Last year, limited sample, Elder did have some issues with lefties in particular, only struck them out at a 15.7% clip, allowed a 168 actual ISO, but a 192 expected ISO, only a 244 BABIP to lefties, so ran pretty good there. 346 expected WOBA against them. If you're going to get to Elder, it's likely to be with left-handed hitters, which isn't surprising. I wish that the Reds had better ones, but they do have.
So do they.
Yeah.
I'm sure they'd be stoked to not have, well, he's not lefty, but Jose Barrero with the projected 58 WRC plus via Fangraphs. That is something special right there. It should not be April 10th and you're trotting out a guy that projects at a 58 WRC plus.
Probably really good defensively, I would guess.
He has to be, right? He has to be like one of the greatest gloves ever. For that to be like tolerable. I got nothing else here. Favorite bat in this game that isn't Ronald Acuna?
Matt Olson.
Yeah, hard to say anything else there. I mean, I guess pretty easy to choose Riley as well.
Yeah, so you could say Riley if you wanted to factor in position. You could say Murphy.
Yeah. All righty, that's 2 games up. Let's keep it moving. But first, hit that like button. We're up to about 640 people, 86 likes, so we should be able to get over that 100 mark pretty easily. Schedule for the rest of the day. I think it's just MLB Live Before Lock coming up after this. Could be wrong. Not entirely sure, but I'm pretty sure that it's just MLB Live Before Lock. We don't normally have anything after that, but if we did, I certainly wouldn't be able to figure it out. We also have a little bit of a promo going on. I believe today is the last day, but again, that your mileage may vary. Just assume that it is. This is, if you're looking to get behind the paywall with our MLB product, $9 for your first 9 days, so long as you use the promo code PLAYBALL. You'll see the link in chat or in the description of this video. We're talking projections, ownership, top stacks tool, which we're going to touch on when we talk about every single team, our top pitchers tool, our internal Discord. There's a lot of data out there for you at stokastic.com, and you can check it all out for just $9. You'll waste $9 on something else in your life. I'm quite sure of it. So come join us. Come hang out. Game number 3, Chicago Cubs, 4-run implied total. Hosting the Mariners, 4.8 run implied total. Drew Smyly going for Chicago. Luis Castillo going for Seattle. Let's start on the Seattle side with Castillo, 9,600, projected for about 20% ownership. So right there in that Scherzer realm, quite a bit cheaper, honestly. $800 is no laughing matter, but they're basically all the same guys at the top. How do you feel about Castillo in relationship to the others?
Yeah, I think he looks good here. I think he's really interesting in tournaments on FanDuel because he's $400 more expensive than Scherzer. So as a result, he's getting a little bit less than half the ownership. And obviously, you should be playing Scherzer at a higher clip, or the field should be playing Scherzer at a higher clip. But they're very, very similar in terms of range of outcomes. They both, are very good strikeout pitchers. Last season, 30.5% strikeout percentage for Scherzer, about 27% for Castillo. So behind Scherzer, but not by a crazy amount. Really good pitcher overall. 3.23 xFIP, 3.35 Sierra. Doesn't walk a ton of guys. Does a good job limiting power. 0.78 home runs per 9. So I like him as a pivot there. Just to get a low-owned, very high upside pitcher. On DraftKings, I like getting to him as well, pulling around 20%, like you said. Wind isn't blowing out at Wrigley, so you don't have to worry about that. It just looks like a pretty good option.
Now I've got to ask you about Drew Smyly, 7,800. He's projected for 2% ownership, which is basically nothing, but he is decent odds in our top pitchers tool, at least in relationship to his ownership. Do you get to Smyly at all as a mid-tier option?
Probably not. I mean, he is going under-owned in the sense that we have him with a 9.5% chance of being a top 2 pitcher, only 2%, 1.5% ownership. Typically, I don't get that far off the board with pitching. I also really like this spot for the Mariners, but he is going under-owned. There's like 8 pitchers that look like him though. Smyly, Matz, Miley, Ashcraft, Greinke, Marquez, Corbin, all projected for 1 to 2% ownership on DraftKings, all have a top 2 pitcher percentage between 3.5, for Corbin and 9.5% for Smiley. So like you have a bunch of these guys that just look comparable where like, oh, cool, I have a 1% owned pitcher. But typically I'm going to end up getting different with bats before I get different with pitching.
All right. Well, then let's look at those bats. You referenced the Mariners here, fourth in our top stack tool, fifth in value, fourth in stack score. They are pulling a decent amount of ownership right now. They are third, but they do get Drew Smiley on the opposite side. How do you want to attack Smiley with Seattle?
Yeah, I like the spot for Seattle. You have a lot of right-handed power in this lineup. Smiley is somebody that he can be frustrating to stack against. When he's on, when he's locating well, you'll get a lot of infield pop-ups. And it's just, one of these guys where it's like, man, my hitters should be crushing him and they're not. But he just has a small margin for error. And if he's not on his game, he's going to get lit up. 180 ISO allowed to righties since the beginning of last season, 167 expected ISO. And you just got a Mariners lineup that has a lot of right-handed power. Rodriguez, France, Suarez, Hernandez, Pollock, 1 through 5. The entire lineup, with the exception of JP Crawford batting ninth, will be hitting from the right side against Smiley. But that 1 through 4, you can throw in Pollock if you want, but really 1 through 4 is just very, very dangerous. Pollock is a solid hitter as well. You can go to Tommy Murphy for upside at the catcher position also. There's just a lot to like from the Mariners.
Yeah, nothing crazy here to me. Julio Rodriguez is pulling some sizable ownership. He absolutely should in the leadoff spot. Well worth the price tag, especially in this matchup. So I don't have much to add other than the park really does help Smiley. It does negate righty power pretty well. So I'm hoping that he can just sort of nerf that if that's the path you want to take with Smiley. But do you see anything on the Cubs side attacking Castillo? That seems like a bigger tough sell.
Yeah, it's a pretty difficult sell. I mean, the Cubs aren't getting any ownership and it's baseball. But other than that, there's nothing that I can like point to and say, oh, yeah, I think this is where Castillo may struggle or these are the guys that I would want to take against him. Since the start of last year, 143 expected ISO to lefties, sub 100 to righties. The Cubs lineup also not the scariest. Yeah, it's pretty tough for me to want to get there.
Yeah, Cubs 13th in top stack tool, 13th in ownership. There may be a little bit of value to squeeze out of that, especially with Castillo pulling some ownership, but you're getting pretty far down the list of teams that you should be choosing like prior to getting to the Cubs. There's just going to be better options.
Yeah. Also from an individual ownership standpoint, for Seattle, Ty France only pulling 5% ownership on DraftKings because he's expensive. That's a good piece to include in your stacks. It's always nice when you can get one of the best hitters on the team at low ownership.
Okay. I don't believe I have anything else here for Cubs or Mariners. So I will ask you this, and I think we may already have the answer, but who knows? Best bat in this game, not Julio Rodriguez.
Ty France, probably.
All righty.
I think you could just kind of flip a coin on any of France, Suarez, Hernandez.
Fair. We go to game number 4, cruising through this slate, honestly. I mean, we've got a lot more to talk about shortly, but Rangers, 5-run implied total. Royals, 4-run implied total. We've got Andrew Heaney going for Texas. We've got Zach Greinke on the hill for Kansas City. Let's go to Heaney, 7,900, projected for 22% ownership. Are you getting to Heaney? Where do you land on Andrew Heaney in this scenario?
He's just underpriced for his strikeout stuff. He comes with plenty of risk, and I think you can look to some Kansas City bats against him as well. But it's just a ton of strikeout upside. It's not a great Kansas City lineup. They have a few very good hitters, but overall, not the best lineup. 3.7 implied run total. It's not the same ballpark in Texas as it used to be, where it was a great place to hit. It's not anymore. Heaney does look good. I think that the salary basically mitigates the fact that he gives up so much power.
Worried about how deep he can go into this game by any chance?
A little bit, just because it's Heaney in general. He's not the most efficient in terms of pitches, but
yeah,
not like overly concerned. In his first start against Baltimore, he threw 69 pitches, but that wasn't a pitch count thing. That was he was getting the shit kicked out of him thing.
Which, isn't good either, but
right.
How do you feel about his ownership right now? Just makes sense given the price?
Yeah, I think it makes sense. The strikeout stuff is just unbelievably good. 35.5% strikeout percentage, only a 6% walk percentage as well. It's just a matter of, can he keep the ball in the park? But the salary just makes him look really appealing.
Yeah. For right now, honestly, I don't have him. It's like the biggest fade that I have right now. It might just be an innings thing for me. It's going to be one that I dig into as we move forward. And like, obviously I understand what the ceiling is here. He can just, he can have a 10 strikeout game today and it wouldn't be all that surprising. But the downside is also very interesting. He's the type of guy where when I don't have him, I do wish that I have the other team.
Yeah.
Like it's a different kind of fade because I feel like his not good starts are ultra not good.
Right. When you talk about pitchers like Scherzer, Castillo, like even if they end up not giving you the start that you want in DFS, you're much more likely to be talking about, like, oh, they scored 12 fantasy points. The other team scored 4 runs. You didn't really want the other team. You didn't want them. Heaney, when he's not on, is, you're talking negative $1 million and he's giving up 6 home runs.
Yeah. Oh, boy. I assume the answer is I'm not going to have him, but is there anything for you on the opposite side for Zach Greinke? Or 5,800 on DraftKings unowned.
The price point, I guess, would be where like the selling point for Greinke, but I doubt you need it on this slate when you have plenty of pitchers in that 7K ish range. Hitter pricing just hasn't really been that sharp this year either. So clearly not somebody you're looking to ever on FanDuel. As an SP2 on DraftKings at 5,800, also probably not looking to him.
Yeah. You're going to need Greinke to have like an ultra efficient deep game because it's not coming from him just racking up the Ks.
Right. It's not a great matchup. He's not a strikeout pitcher at all. 12.5% strikeout percentage since the start of last season is just absurdly bad.
Are you surprised he's still in the league?
Not really. I think he'll.
He was a 2-win pitcher last year.
I think he'll just be in the league as long as he wants to be.
Like, he threw 137 innings and was worth 1.9 wins above replacement last season. Like, that's good.
Yeah. Yeah, he's not as bad as like you would expect him to be. He just, like, I don't know, he's smart. He still knows how to pitch. 4.5 xFIP. It's not great, but it's not what you typically get when a guy is striking out 12% of the hitters he faces.
Yeah, not in the slightest. Strikeout rate so far this season up to 16.7. So
yeah. I think I won a prop on his over in his first start.
I wish that he would go out and get on like all of the steroids and then come back and have like a mid-20s strikeout rate. It would just be so fun to see. Like the moment, like how old is he? He's 39. I was gonna say like the moment you turn 40, you should just be allowed to take whatever you want.
Rich Hill will never retire.
Yeah. Be getting who was around to like 47 or 48? Why can't I remember it now? Jesse Orosco?
Orosco was too. Jamie Moyer.
Yeah, Jamie Moyer. Well, like Jamie Moyer always looked like he was fucking 48 years old.
Right.
But Jesse Orosco, like the moment he turned 40, they should have pumped him full of everything. I bet it would have been the thrilling end to his career. Emac, I appreciate the Julio Franco nod. I was leaning pitchers in this scenario.
Nolan Ryan was around forever too.
Yeah, was probably on stuff though too. Yeah. I would imagine. Just it was pretty crazy.
Yeah, Bartolo Colon's another good one.
Bartolo Colon would have weighed 600 pounds. He would have ended up being like the mountain in Game of Thrones because he would have had to lift to offset all of the steroids too, and he would have became just massive.
Speaking of Cologne, I tweeted it the other day, but Miguel Cabrera is quickly going that route.
Dude, I for sure thought you were about to tell me that you had finished off the 4 bottles of Cologne.
Oh, no.
I was like, come on, man. That's so much Cologne. I haven't seen what Miggy looks like.
He is big.
Really? Like, not the good way either?
No, just looks like Bartolo Colon. Or is going that way.
Let's see. Images.
I was watching the Tigers game the other day and he like grounded out. And it was just like, this is embarrassing to watch.
Yeah, I can't tell when some of these pictures are taken, so it's hard for me to reference. But how much money does he make now?
A lot.
Oh yeah, he's still got some time left. Originally signed the 8-year, $248 million deal. He's got vesting options in 2024 and 2025. Get that bag, man. Even though, okay, so now we're talking about something like we said it with Greinke. He legitimately should have been out of the league like 7 years ago. Here are his wins above replacement since 2016. In 2016, it was 5.1. After that, negative 0.7, 0.8, negative 0.5, 0.3, negative 0.6, negative 1.5, and somehow already down 0.2 of a win through this season. I mean, that's pretty awful. He signed that contract and immediately it all went to shit. Maybe that's when he stopped taking steroids. Right. He was just like, I don't need it anymore. All right. Since we're not going to be looking at Greinke, I assume the more likely scenario is that you're looking at Texas bats. They are 7th in top stack, 3rd in top value. They are 5th in ownership right now. What do you want to do with Texas here against Greinke?
Yeah, they just look pretty good. The salary, the value, like you said, they're cheap. You can get the pitching you want with them. You have Semien relatively expensive at the top, but once you get through 1 through 4, the rest of this lineup is sub 3K on DraftKings. Greinke's not, a total gas can, like we were saying. 183 expected ISO to righties last year, 114 to lefties, but you do have good hitters in the Texas lineup. Semien, Seager, Lowe, Garcia. Jonah Heim is always an appealing catcher option, has some power, can actually run a little bit as well. The bottom of the order is ugly, but Bubba Thompson will certainly look to steal if he gets on base. So you get, upside there. Jankowski can run as well. So while those guys can't really hit, you do get stolen base upside, which is nice. Josh Smith is back after getting blasted in the face against the Orioles. So that's good to see. But yeah, Texas just looks good. Obviously be aware of the ownership, but overall they look good.
What about on the opposite side? We talked about Heaney's blow-up potential. We have Kansas City as the number 11 stack, but they are 8th in ownership. There's not much coming in here outside of Bobby Witt. And there are so many MPEs that it's really easy to put together a Royals lineup. How do you want to handle this?
Yeah, this is a team that I stacked like crazy last year in large part because of the MPE. But I do like getting to them here. They're not a great lineup, but they do have some right-handed power. You mentioned Bobby Witt getting ownership. Certainly think he deserves that. But beyond that, Salvador Perez pulling 4.5% ownership. Olivares is cheap, only pulling 3%. Hunter Dozier's 2,400, pulling 1%. I think any of those guys look like pretty good plays. From a stacking standpoint, you can certainly include, other guys like Pasquantino, who's good. Andrew Heaney isn't great against lefties. Still a 166 expected ISO last year. Struck out 28.8% of lefties compared to 35.8% of righties. So, I think you can still take shots on Pasquantino as well.
Yeah, I find them interesting. Just given the Heaney ownership, given his general output on the mound from day to day. So I don't mind at all getting to Kansas City at basically no ownership. That seems pretty reasonable to me. I got nothing else for this game.
Yeah, I really like the 3-mans here. Like, it's perfectly fine to just, to stack Kansas City, but some combination of like Witt, Perez, Olivares in particular just is really appealing.
All righty. Well, folks, let's talk a little bit about Bet365. You can see it on the banner at the top of the screen. This one's going to be pretty simple, particularly for those of you in New Jersey, Colorado, Ohio, and Virginia. If you live in one of those 4 states, there's some money to be had here because all you have to do is bet $1 and you will get $200 in bonus bets. There aren't many situations in life where you could put down $1 and just get $200 no matter what. A lot of the times you're going to be taking a fairly sizable risk. Think about putting down $1 on a 200-1 underdog. There's no underdog here. You're getting the stone cold nuts for $1. Now, it does require a deposit. Your bonus bet winnings get added to a bonus bet balance. But if you're looking to get into the sports betting landscape, this deal right here is going to cost you $1, and you're going to end up with $200 in your bankroll right after that. Now, the legal age for gambling in most states is 21 or over, and if you or someone you know has a gambling problem, please call or text 1-800-GAMBLER.
One other point here in favor of Heaney. I kept looking at the Kansas City lineup, and I knew Melendez wasn't in it, but I couldn't figure out who else was missing. No Franmil Reyes is a nice bump for Heaney.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, this lineup stinks.
Oh, yeah.
For Kansas City.
Yeah, I mean, it's relatively difficult to strike out, but yeah, once you get past Perez and sort of excluding Dozier, there's not really power there.
Yeah. I mean, Duffy Lopez is pretty bad.
Yeah. Also just really annoying from a rostering pitchers against them standpoint because they hit everything.
Also true. Score as we go. Colorado, 5.3 run implied total. St. Louis, 6.2. Oof. Herman Marquez going for Colorado. Steven Matz going for St. Louis. No ownership to Marquez. No ownership to Matz. That's going to be the spot where I ask, do you want to get to Steven Matz at all?
Not particularly. Did strike out about 26% of hitters last year, which is better than you typically expect from Mats. He was actually just really good across the board last year. Did have issues with home runs, but other than that, doesn't walk guys. 3.15 xFIP, 26% strikeout percentage. The Rockies do also suck, so there's that. You could make a case for Mats, I think. I don't think I'll end up getting much of him, though.
I do find him interesting when you just look $200 cheaper at Zach Gallen's 30% ownership. Not that I don't like Gallen, because I am getting to Zach Gallen, but at the same time, there's going to be times where you want to get against this Colorado team because these bats are shitty.
Yeah, of those like 7 pitchers I named earlier that were getting 1 to 2% ownership on DraftKings, if I have to roster one, I would go to bats first.
Okay, I think we're on the same page there. I don't get the sense that I have to ask you about $8,500 Herman Marquez, who very clearly to me looks worse than Mats.
Yeah, I think he looks worse than Mats for sure. He's more expensive. He has the more difficult matchup. He doesn't have the same strikeout stuff. Only struck out like 19 or 20% of hitters last year, 19.3%. He's a perfectly fine real life pitcher. He's somebody you're going to roster a decent amount this year when you get him outside of Coors Field, but certainly not a spot where I'm looking to pay $8,500 for Marquez.
No, I think they should have made him $5,800 for this particular spot.
Right. Make him Zach Greinke's price, and it's at least a discussion.
He's still not even getting rostered with any sort of volume. So that's a testament to how 8,500 is just batshit insane for today. What's not insane? Rostering the bats in this game. I guess we'll start with the Cardinals. Number 1 in ownership, number 1 in top stack, number 1 in top score, or in stack score, number 2 in value. And that's where it starts to get pretty ridiculous. It's very easy to get to St. Louis. They are pulling ownership, and I don't like it. It is fully justified.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's still baseball. You have an entire team pulling double-digit ownership. So it's a spot that in tournaments I'm frequently just not going to get to as much because it becomes so difficult to differentiate. But in cash games and just from a probability standpoint, they are the best stack.
Yeah, there's really based on the Steamer projections, there's not a single bat in the lineup below 100.
Yeah,
they're loaded from top to bottom. You've got MPEs in the 1 and 2 spot. All of the price tags are, pretty reasonable. It's not like seeing 5,900 for Paul Goldschmidt is like sticker shock. And as you work your way down from there, it's super, super simple. So you sort of mentioned it, and I guess I want to dig into it just slightly. Is this if you saw yourself getting a lot of Cardinals, is that just not possible given the way that you have things set up, or would you be actively trying to get away from them in terms of 5-man stacks?
No, I mean, if they're showing up for me, then I'm happy to play them. It probably just means that I'm mixing in a lot of those low-owned Kansas City guys or something like that, or maybe I'm getting to lower-owned pitchers. I think it's unlikely that I end up going that route, just because I don't really like any of the unowned pitchers very much. I do like other offenses that are relatively popular. So I just, my guess, I haven't built lineups. My guess is that I don't get to as much St. Louis, but again, if you can find ways to make contrarian lineups, it's still fine. They are in a great spot. I do wish they had more left-handed power than they do. Marquez, since the start of last year, 180 expected ISO, 220 actual ISO to lefties, 163 expected ISO, 199 actual ISO to righties. So not surprisingly has given up a little bit more power to lefties. But you do have, Gorman, I think is really interesting hitting 6th. You have Donovan and Burleson at the top, but then the righties here are just obviously really, really good. So it's not like you're avoiding Goldschmidt, Arenado, Contreras. Jordan Walker's got a ton of power. It's just a really good lineup top to bottom.
Yeah, if there's going to be righties out there facing Marquez, it's 208 ISO Goldschmidt, 211 ISO Arenado, 187 Contreras. We're still getting heavy power from the right-hand side.
Yep.
Now, we got to flip it over to the other side here for Colorado. They are 3rd in our top stack tool, 4th in ownership, 4th in our stack score. They're sort of just scattered right around 9 to 10% ownership on basically everybody. What do you see when you look at Colorado here going up against Mats?
I don't like the matchup nearly as much, but I do like the lack of ownership. I mean, you're still getting them in Coors Field. They don't have the 6.5 implied run total, but it's still up over 5. I like getting to them just because they're not very popular. They also suck, so that's a problem. Jurickson Profar at the top is whatever. Blackman lefty isn't ideal. Bryant and Crone actually look good, and then you get to Diaz, Montero, Daza, Trejo, Tovar. These guys just are not very good. No. But low-owned team in cores, I'm always interested. One thing with Matz, he used to be really bad at holding runners. He's been better the last few years. He's graded out as pretty much average. So we don't have that working in our favor anymore either.
I know you haven't run any lineups. Do you expect to get to Colorado in a more sizable way than the field?
Probably.
Okay.
From an individual hitter standpoint, there's just not much ownership coming in. Chris Bryant 12%, Profar at 10, Diaz at 13. But you can play 9% on CJ Cron is always appealing.
Best Colorado bet.
Bryant.
Yeah, probably. A $3,700 price on Profar in the leadoff spot is appealing.
Agreed.
And then, not that anybody wants to hear this on a baseball show that we're doing, but did not know that Profar was outfield only. I don't know how long he's been in the outfield, but that's not the position he was playing when I thought about him.
With Texas?
Yeah, it's been a minute. I mean, this dude's been around for such a long time if you were in the prospect streets.
Oh, yeah. Is he even 30 yet?
We're about to find out.
He
just turned 30 last month.
Okay. I'll say he was super young when he came up.
Actually, 2 months ago in February, but, close enough. Yeah, he was born in 93, came up in 2012 with Texas when he was 19. Only a cup of coffee, but was up for 320 plate appearances in 2013. And he was a real prospect.
Oh, yeah.
Top of the food chain, number one guy. So I've been thinking about him playing baseball for a very, very long time. It's crazy to think about. I guess I don't have anything else here other than obviously the Cardinals hitters are fantastic, and you're probably making up a large amount of your cash lineup with St. Louis Cardinals. That be a safe statement to make?
Yeah, they're cheap. They're good. They just project as the best plays.
Okay. Nothing else here?
Nope.
Another team that we definitely need to talk about from an offense perspective is going to be the Angels. They have a 5.8 run implied total. The Nats are at 3.9. Jose Suarez on the bump for the Angels. Pat Corbin going for the Nats. We got to talk pitching to start. $6,900 Jose Suarez is pulling 15% ownership. How do you feel about that value option against a lackluster Nats bats team?
I think he's interesting just because when you compare him to Gallen and when you compare him to Bryce Elder, he's just getting half the ownership of those guys. And Gallen obviously is really good and mispriced. Elder's got a good matchup against Cincy. Not a ton of strikeouts in the Washington lineup, but from a range of outcome standpoint, it's just, I don't really know why Suarez is getting half the ownership. He's not a bad pitcher at all. So yeah, I'm interested in tournaments. 22% strikeout percentage last year, 3.86 xFIP, 3.91 Sierra. He's just a solid pitcher. He's not really different than Bryce Elder. He's probably better. So yeah, just a little confused why he's not getting more ownership, especially at the expense of Elder.
Yeah, I agree that he and Elder are pretty swappable, and one being 2x in ownership is certainly an appealing mark. I'm not really getting that low. I don't have much of Elder or Suarez. My line in the sand is basically Zach Gallen. So
yeah,
I'm not really down at any of that ownership. So we'll see how that ends up shaking out for me. Didn't really feel like a day where you needed the salary.
Yeah, no, I'm there with you.
Corbin?
No,
you don't want him against the 5.8 run implied total Angels?
Yeah, no, I'm good. He is somebody that I play probably more than is good for me, but this is not a spot where I plan on doing it.
He is one of three pitchers that I do not have a single share of. The others being
he's probably
Herman Marquez and Miley.
He's the worst pitcher on the slate, right?
He has the lowest projection of anybody on the slate for me, that's for sure. Well, let's talk bats then, because we're going to the other chalk. Angels, second in ownership, second in our top stack tool, second in our stack score. The only thing is they're not as free as the Cardinals are because Mike Trout and Shohei Ohtani play for this team. They're both pulling ownership, a ton of it, in fact. This whole team is pulling quite a bit, although the bottom of the lineup is pretty tame when it comes to ownership. They've got 4 guys with MPEs. How are you handling the Angels? And then let me know in relationship to the Rockies and Cardinals.
Yeah, I mean, I like the Angels quite a bit here. Corbin just not particularly good anymore. I'm sure the Nats are wishing they had not given him that contract. But 232 expected ISO to righties last year, only struck out 17.8% of them, 17% strikeout percentage against lefties as well, 176 expected ISO. And you're just getting an Angels lineup that is nothing but right-handed power and Shohei Ohtani, who hits lefties very well also. So it sets up as a really, really appealing stack. I do like that there are more ways to differentiate with this team than there are with the Cardinals. Obviously, you're going to get ownership coming into Ohtani, Trout, Ward, Renfroe pulling 12%, Drury's pulling 15%, but you have Rendon at 9%, Urshela at 6%, Ohapi and Rengifo also at 6 or 7% respectively. So it's just a little bit easier to differentiate with this team than it is with the Cardinals. That was the thing that really stood out to me with the Cardinals, and why I think it's likely I don't get to a lot is there's just no path to stacking that team and not just having, double-digit ownership everywhere. Whereas with the Angels, you can mix in, a couple guys here and there, and you have a relatively low-owned Angel stack.
I picture Logan Ohapi as the Lucky Charms mascot. That name is hilarious to say out loud.
I think he's actually a pretty highly regarded prospect.
Is he? Well, a highly regarded cereal if you like marshmallows.
Fangraphs has him 51st overall.
Okay. I heard you say his name earlier this morning, and that was the first time that I had ever heard it. And I was like, well, that's a funny name.
Yeah, they got him in the Brandon Marsh trade, I believe.
Okay. Doesn't really have any tools. Seems like an average dude.
Yeah, 50 grade raw power, 30-40 game power.
Not great, but catcher's different.
Yeah, I mean, Steamer has him with a 180 ISO projection.
That'll work.
Yeah.
Also, based on those scouting grades, that feels a tad high.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Zips is at 170, the Bats at 171. They're all in that same ballpark. All projecting above average in WRC plus as well.
Good to see. It's a nice way to get a $3,500 home run.
Yep.
Against Pat Corbin. Best Angels bat that isn't Trout or Ohtani.
Ward.
Yeah, has to be, right?
Yeah.
Although I mean, $3,900 Rendon.
I like Rendon. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, we're going to say the same thing.
Yeah, I like Rendon, Renfroe, Drury, but I think Ward is the best non-Trout Ohtani.
Yeah, getting a $3,900 third baseman at 9% ownership, given this whole experience, is, I assume he's higher owned than 9% is really the actual answer to this, but that's price and position help out there a bit. I'm not saying that he's going to be like 22 or anything, but if 9 was 14, it would look a lot more reasonable next to everybody else in the lineup.
Yeah, I mean, it's just you have Arenado at that position.
That's fair. And you can get to a Rengifo if you want to make this stack with another third base option. So that'll help to mute it a little bit. Not that anybody's going there either.
Yeah, I mean, third base is just loaded too, because like you have Arenado, you also have Suarez, you have Riley.
Yeah. It's just a price thing, because like if you're going to Trout and Ohtani in a stack, like then Rendon is very quickly going to be a part of that lineup.
Right.
Nats bats here against Suarez and the ownership. Is there anything here for you? Because I assume the answer is no.
Yeah, not really. Suarez is a solid enough pitcher. Did allow a 170 expected ISO to righties last year. So, I mean, you can look to right-handed power against him. I don't really know where you find that in this lineup. Stone Garrett, I guess, is fine. Joey Meneses certainly is fine. But I doubt that I get to the Nats too much.
Okay. Well, one final thing to talk about, guys. You guys got to hit that like button. We're up over 1,000 people. It's always nice to see 1,000 people come together for a show. 156 likes. I think we can get to the 200 mark. And if we do, nothing changes. We just, Adam and I get out of here and we turn it over to the Live Before Lock crew. But what you guys should do is sign up for our MLB Bet Pro package. 7-day free trial for new users. Normally it's going to be $29.95 a week or $99.95 a month, but 7-day free trial. Can't really beat that. That's a pretty nice deal. We're going to do a lot of the legwork here for you. We have a model that has existed for many, many years. We're now applying that to sports betting. This is where you're going to get all of your info. We do the math to let you know what percentage of your bankroll you should use on a wager. We give you the expected value and win rates for these bets as well. It's just a fantastic option if you want to save yourself a little bit of time, but still have the backing of a data product. And you can get what I believe is Adam's Bet Pro video Monday through Friday.
Eventually, yes.
There you go. Monday through Friday, eventually. Does it exist at all right now?
No.
Okay, but it is coming.
Yes.
Keep your eyes peeled on that Odd Shopper channel for Adam's Bet Pro video. We gotta taper off the NBA first before we get Adam going on MLB, but it is coming soon, and I know you guys will want to watch it, so make sure that you do. Live questions that don't have answers are probably not the most fun thing in the world, but what are you going to do? I had no idea. I would have checked the schedule, but Diamondbacks 4.9 run implied total. Brewers 4.2. We've got Zach Gallen on the hill for Arizona. We've got Wade Miley on the hill for Milwaukee. Let's go to Gallen, 7,100, projected for 30% ownership. He is essentially the highest owned guy on the slate, basically tied with Bryce Elder. Where does Gallen land for you?
He's, I think, the 7K pitcher that you feel the most confident in. He is a good pitcher. I don't know why the salary is as cheap as it is. When you talk about Suarez, you talk about Elder. From a talent standpoint, they're good, but they should be around 7K. Zach Gallen struck out nearly 27% of hitters last year. His strikeout percentage is in line with Luis Castillo. 3.31 xFIP is similar to Castillo. 6.6% walk percentage is better than Castillo. 0.73 home runs per 9, very similar to Castillo, slightly better. From a talent standpoint, you are talking about a really good pitcher in Zach Gallen, and he's just not expensive here. So, the Brewers lineup can certainly do some damage, but Gallen's just probably $1,000 to $1,500 less expensive than he should be.
Yeah, and a lot of strikeouts in this Brewers lineup, at least the way that I'm looking at it. So I am over the field on Gallen. I will happily be there too. To me, he is the clear best pay down option that you can get to today.
Yep, agreed. But yeah, guys like Elder and Suarez certainly should be getting some ownership in that range. Logan Webb is a good pitcher, in a very difficult matchup, but he's getting some ownership. But to me, Gallen is the guy you go to first. Particularly
in this park, which is, at least from a power perspective, negates it big time. So that helps for me too.
FanDuel, he's 8,900, still pulling 16% ownership there. So we have him as the second highest owned pitcher on FanDuel behind Scherzer. I think that's fine as well. Pitcher pricing there is just a little bit tighter. He's still $400 less than Darvish. He's $1,200 less than Scherzer. He's a lot less than Castillo and Urias. So I still think the ownership on FanDuel, even on the one pitcher slate, makes sense. It's less of a broken price tag though.
How much are you looking to get for Wade Miley today?
I am not.
No, not a Wade Miley guy.
No, I think he's a decent real life pitcher. He's not a very good fantasy pitcher.
Yeah, Wade Miley is one of the guys that I don't have a single share of. So not going to be someone that I'm advocating for all that hard here.
17.5% strikeout percentage last year.
All right. Well, we got to talk about bats in this one. Interesting spot. The Diamondbacks are 6th in ownership. They're also 5th in our top stack tool and 1st in top value. This is basically the easiest team that exists to get there. There's some ownership coming in. A lot of it is coming into Ketel Marte right now. $4,300 second baseman makes some sense to me. What do you want to do here with Arizona?
Yeah, kind of surprised that they're not getting more ownership just because they are cheap. Wade Miley's not a pitcher that I love targeting, but he will let you put the ball in play, so you do get some upside against him. Held righties to a 156 expected ISO last year, 321 expected WOBA. Lefties did basically nothing against him. You also are missing Kyle Lewis. He's on the injured list, so that takes a good right-handed bat out of the lineup. But you still have Marte, you still have Gurriel and Walker. That 3-man looks good. Gabby Moreno is a high upside catcher option that probably won't be getting much ownership at the bottom of the order. Highly regarded prospect, came over from Toronto in the Dalton Varsho trade. So don't mind using him as a contrarian piece. I would certainly like this lineup better if they had Kyle Lewis in there, but still the Marte, Gurriel, Walker trio, and then obviously mixing in some Longoria, Ahmed, Rojas. Those guys are all fine as well.
Yeah, it's just it's a price tag thing. Interesting filler bats, that's for sure.
Yeah. I'm also interested in this. It's not like actionable or anything. I'm just curious to see sort of what Nick Ahmed's offensive season looks like. He's been playing through a shoulder injury for years. And Arizona, he got it fixed over the offseason. Arizona is optimistic that he is a better hitter this year.
Interesting. Okay. Well, projected for an 80 WRC plus via steamer. So you better hope that shoulder surgery takes. Let's go to the opposite side here. Milwaukee bats. We know that there's some power in this lineup, but we also know that there's a pretty sizable amount of ownership going to Zach Gallen. They are 8th in top stack, 4th in top value, but just 9th in ownership. Is this a spot where we should be taking some low owned swings at the Brewers, given the sort of scenario for this?
It's reasonable just given the amount of power in Milwaukee's lineup, but Gallen's just not a pitcher that I'm looking at, and like there's nothing that about him that I really want to target. He doesn't give up power to either side of the plate. He's good at getting strikeouts against both sides. 28.5% strikeout percentage to lefties, 24.5 to righties. Has a very good changeup, so that's why you see that split where he has a higher strikeout percentage against lefties. But he held lefties since the start of last year to a 110 expected ISO. Righties are at 144. So again, he's reverse splits because of that changeup, but it's not like he gives it up to righties. He's just not as dominant, but he's still very, very good. So to me, this is, if you're going to Milwaukee, it's purely a leverage play against Gallen and a betting on low owned upside with, a lineup that does have plenty of power.
Yeah. Like given our top stack tool and the current ownership, like it seems like a spot where you should be willing to take those shots in the largest field contest. Like this isn't a small field type pivot, right? But in the big GPP, like I think Milwaukee is probably a little underrepresented, particularly for what it brings you if Gallen does blow up. I don't have much to add there. Like we're talking about a team that's the top scoring stack 5.5% of the time. Like we're talking about something that's going to happen essentially like once every 3 weeks.
Right. Would you rather go to Cincy or Milwaukee?
It's got to be Milwaukee, right? Better offense, more power. Like I
just different planets in terms of opposing pitcher though.
Yeah. I mean, I like the implied total for the Brewers there a little bit more than the Reds. Pretty, basically like a half run.
Yeah.
Man. I wouldn't feel good about any of them. I hate the park here for power, and that's probably the biggest issue.
Yep. Yeah, remember when this was basically Coors Field South?
Yeah. I mean, I wish that all of these fields would continue to just be bandboxes, but
yeah. I mentioned it this morning with Offie. I do think that they've gone back to the juice ball.
Like the league?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, home runs are way up this year.
I hope you're right.
They're close to in line with whatever 2019, I think it was.
Well, to be fair, there is global warming.
That is true.
Final game, the San Francisco Giants. I got that right. In my mind, I was just like, shit, I named the football team. 3.3 run implied total for the Giants, 4 for the Dodgers. Logan Webb going for San Francisco. Julio Urias going for the Dodgers, 12% ownership coming to Webb, 24 coming to Urias. Let's go here. I've mentioned throughout the show that the top 3 pitchers of Scherzer, Castillo, and Urias are all basically owned the same. This is the spot that I'm getting to the most. That would be Urias, projected for 24% ownership. I am doubling that. That is the most exposed pitcher that I have. How do you feel about him?
Yeah, I think he looks good. The price tag is just a little bit cheaper than Castillo. It saves you $1,000 on DraftKings off of Scherzer. Good park to pitch in, 3.4 implied run total for the Giants. Not the scariest lineup that they're running out there either. So I certainly like Urias on DraftKings. On FanDuel, it's a totally different play because he's the most expensive of the group. So you're paying up to be contrarian at that point. You're paying more for him than for Scherzer, more for him than for Castillo. But as a result, he's only pulling like 3% ownership or something in that ballpark. So I think that he's a good tournament play on FanDuel just because he's low owned. On DraftKings, it's more of a value.
Love it. I love it for today. Just being the cheapest guy, same ownership. I'm a fan. So I was heavy on Scherzer for his opening day start. So I already know how today's slate is going to go. Scherzer's going to mow down 15 dudes. What do you want to do with Logan Webb on the opposite side? He's pulling about 12% ownership. He's 7,400 in a different situation. I think he'd be significantly higher owned at this current price tag, but it's so difficult. Do I think he's a really nice I mean, if you look at our top pitcher tool and our top value, he looks underrepresented for today. But the huge caveat here, it's the Dodgers on the opposite side.
Yeah, I mean, it's a price tag on Logan Webb that's very favorable considering how good of a pitcher he is. But this matchup is brutal. He is getting some ownership at 13% because of the salary. But I would throw him into that Jose Suarez conversation where, he's not going to project as well as guys like Elder or Gallen, but he's not a 2-1 or 3-1 dog against those guys either. He's still a good pitcher. As good as the Dodgers are, it's still very difficult to hit baseballs, and you are still playing in San Francisco. So I like him as a lower owned tournament play. I would, again, I think Gallen and Elder look better from a projection standpoint.
Yeah, and this is going to be another one of those spots where, like, if you look back at it, it's not that Logan Webb mowed down 12 Dodgers. It's that he went 8 and was he was just keeping efficient. Everybody off the path. Yeah.
It's interesting. We actually have him projected higher than Gallen.
I do not, and it's not close.
Yeah, I am more in line with that, just thinking about it. But we have him as the highest projected sub 8K pitcher on DraftKings. Actually, the highest projected sub 9K pitcher on DraftKings.
I have it as Gallen, and then I have Darvish, Heaney, Suarez, and then Webb. But, I mean, you can make a very easy case to move a couple of those names around.
Yeah, the point is he's a good pitcher in a good park in a brutal matchup.
Yeah. Yeah, like much better real-life pitcher than he is in DFS, too.
Yeah. Yeah, not a great strikeout rate in general. And then certainly, facing the Dodgers isn't like...
He might be the best pitcher in baseball in comparison to his, like, DFS output.
It's possible.
Like... Because eventually, when you start getting towards the top, you don't have a choice to be a good DFS play as well.
Right.
But his strikeout rate is low enough.
I think there's a kind of a big gap between Alcantara, like what he is in real life and what he is in DFS. But he goes so deep in the games, it makes up for it. He's not a great strikeout pitcher, but he just goes 9 innings every start.
That's fair. Well, we got to talk about bats, and I don't think there's going to be a lot to talk about here. The Dodgers are currently 10th in ownership. The Giants are 14th. Do you want to target against either one of these pitchers in this spot?
Not particularly. The Dodgers certainly fall into that category where if they're low owned, they're always appealing just because you have so many good hitters in this lineup. But outside of that, there's nothing that I look at and makes me want to target either pitcher.
Fair enough. Fantasy Guru hit us with the super chat. Thank you very much for that one. We'll answer it as we get out of here and as we transition over to MLB Live Before Lock. Adam, who is the best value pitcher on FanDuel?
Just in terms of like strictly point per dollar, Drew Smiley, but
I don't think that's going to be the real answer.
No, yeah, I don't think that's the real answer. As far as actual pitchers that you would want to roster, trying to sort by that now, but it's not loading. There it goes. I'll go with Heaney.
Okay.
You can make a case.
I was going to say Gallen.
Yeah, so you can definitely.
89 feels like too high for this kind of question.
I mean, 89 is pretty cheap on FanDuel.
It is.
The hesitation with Heaney there is like the 6 innings is so important.
Yeah. Well, there you go, Fantasy Guru. Thank you for the super chat. And thank you guys for watching. Please hit that like button if you can. Subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, and don't go anywhere. MLB Live Before Lock coming up next. Thank you, Bet365. We're out of here. Peace.
Yo, it's that time of week again. We're giving out some free months of Stokastic Plus Platinum, inducting you fine people into the Hall of Fame right here on the Stokastic Hall of Fame. All you got to do to get involved, become part of the big show, as you're going to see many huge screenshots from today, is download the Stokastic profile picture at stokastic.com/avatar. Tweet your wins at Stokastic Hall of Fame, Stokastic HOF to be exact, and win a free month of Stokastic Plus Platinum, $120 value, and get inducted right here by me. Let's get into it. First up, Andrew St. Clair hit it last night. Yeah, you did. $17,500 in the Friday MLB squeeze. That kicks off the week in a big way here on the Hall of Fame. And then Jake Hari follows it up. Our own Jake Hari. Night in the hockey streets. Use the Stokastic NHL Top Stacks tool to get more or some extra Colorado 1 lineups for the top positive leverage stack of the slate. First place 10K for old Jake Hari there. And these next couple, not qualifying for the free month, but we will have an Odd Shopper Hall of Fame coming up shortly. I don't know if we have. I don't think we do, but it's coming. I had to put them in there because they were massive. Monroe, does this count? No, but you still get up here, which is pretty cool. $4.50 wager, $10,600 win on that. Just Massive long shot, 5-leg parlay, $4 in the 10,600. You do not see that often. So congrats, Monroe. That's massive. What about Tim Hutchinson? Thanks to Stokastic.com for the great tools. May not make the Stokastic Hall of Fame, but hitting 5 of these in one day is fire. Yeah, look at the ROI on all of these. Another one, using the Stokastic betting tools, using the Odd Shopper betting tool, the NBA Bet Pro. You know how it goes. MLB Bet Pro, to be exact. It's a beautiful thing. And then last one from a betting perspective before we get to some DFS. Adrian is that guy. I watch the show every day. Thanks, man. $100 in the $7,300 there. Another massive payout on a parlay. So, hey, betting life, betting world's coming to life, and I love to see it. Next up, Kevin D. Missed taking the 5K solo by 2 rushing yards, but still happy on the result. Also not pictured was a 10th. Turned 35 in the 950 last night. Top Stack Tool is my Bible. Thanks for all you guys do. MLB solo shot. I missed a 5K solo by 2 rushing yards. What am I missing here, Jordan? 2 rushing yards. Anyway, great wins, Kevin. 600 and 300 there in the solo shot. And then Kush God, the simple Stokastic Hall of Fame. Good start to the season. Yeah, $1,000 in the solo shot, first place. Big one there. And remember, guys, doesn't matter if you're playing in a field. As long as it's a field of 5,000 or more, and you take a top 3, you're getting the free month. You're getting up here. Could be 25 cents to enter. Nickel, doesn't matter. Austin, the Masters was great. Sweating the last 18 holes was even better. Thanks for the data and resources that allowed me to earn second place finish in the birdie. $1,500 for Xmas time there, second place. And Jonathan Handy, hey, Stokastic, check out this cheeky win. Cheeky, huh? MLB win to start the season. Thanks all the great shows and projections. First out of 53. Oh, just got in there. Just got in for the free month. Congrats, Jonathan. And the final 2, shout out to Stokastic for helping bring home the bacon. MLB 5K Mini Max. First place, $1,000 going to Brady Smith. And we close it out with D-Fick. It's only $40, but I'll take a solo bink in a showdown with 22,000 entries any day. Just had to leave a little salary on the table. Nice breakdown by Matt Kajeski. Definitely helped. Hey, first out of 22,000. Now you can use the tools to level up, increase the bankroll and the stakes. Congrats to all of you guys. Remember, Stokastic.com/avatar. Tweet your wins at Stokastic Hall of Fame with the screenshots. Finish top 3 in a field of 5,000 or more. You're getting up here, inducted into the Hall of Fame, and you're getting the free month of Stokastic Plus Platinum.
What is happening, everybody? It is time for MLB Live Before Lock. The NBA regular season is over. We get a day of reprieve until Neil Orfield's Minnesota Timberwolves take the court tomorrow. So for tonight, we're talking about baseball. And Neil, is that a Colorado Rockies hat?
This is. I got it on my honeymoon. We went to Colorado for my honeymoon. It was sunny, so my wife and I each got a hat, and now I wear it sometimes.
There we go. I've never seen you wear a baseball hat before. I thought you were.
I guess I don't even own a Twins hat. I don't think. I just have this Rockies hat.
Yeah, that was the other thing I was going to ask is why a Rockies hat? Because I know that you are an avid fan of all things Minnesota sports. So we got baseball today and full baseball coverage, which there's going to be a little bit more of going forward. Some of these off days for basketball, and then we're going to get basketball into full swing of the playoffs. But then after that, basketball is going to end, and then we'll be focused on baseball for the entirety of the summer. So baseball show tonight. As you guys come in, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. And we've got a Coors Field game to talk about, which is going to correlate with Neil's hat. We're going to have to get some thoughts on the Coors Field game and then what we're going to do with the pitchers. We're sponsored by Bet365 today. So I'm going to tell you guys how you can get some free money from that sportsbook. Neil, how are you doing today?
I just learned that my Twins did already lose today. I didn't even know that they were playing today because they weren't on the slate. Apparently they played earlier in the day and lost. So that's a bummer. I'm excited for the Timberwolves game. Undecided what I'm doing for it. My brother invited me over. It sounds like multiple groups of my friends are going to the same brewery in it's like St. Paul border with Minneapolis. I might go there, but then I also have a super early morning, so I don't know what I'm going to do exactly. But looking forward to watching it play out. Really hope they can play the Lakers. Not really optimistic in the Timberwolves going forward, but overall, I'm doing good. It's 70 degrees here today. Last week at this time was probably 35, so excited about the weather. How are you doing today?
I am very excited because I finally got all my Apple stuff from DraftKings. So I've been setting all that up today. I've got a new iPhone I got from them. I got my Apple Watch. I got a new iPad. I got a new MacBook. So I've been setting up all my Apple stuff, and I've been very excited about it. So you said the weather here. I could look right at my watch now and tell you it's 65 degrees outside here right now at 6:08 p.m. Eastern time, Eastern Standard. Know all this because I have a watch now. Before that, I still was able to tell just by looking at my phone. But it's neither here nor there. I'm happy to have some of the free stuff and happy to bring you guys a free baseball show. If you guys are watching on YouTube, do us a favor, like this video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Like I said, we're sponsored by Bet365. And should we tell the people right now how to get some free money from Bet365, or should we save it for a couple minutes?
I think we just get out. It's people in just 4 states. So you just got to get the attention of people in those 4 states. Let's just do it right away. Let them know so they can jump on it.
I figured there was a chance you were in the Colorado Rockies hat because you knew today's show was sponsored by Bet365, which is one of the 4 states they currently operate in. Because if you guys live in Colorado, New Jersey, where I live, and then there's Ohio, Virginia, I don't know anybody from those states, but they exist. If you're in any of those 4 states and you sign up at Bet365 using the link that we have below, all you have to do is make a $10 deposit over at Bet365. You place a $1 bet, and they instantly give you $200 in bonus bets no matter what ends up happening with that $1 bet you place. It is that easy to get some bonus bets from Bet365. This is a great way to help build your bankroll. Just make sure when you sign up, you use the link that we have below. And if you're anybody you know has a gambling problem, call or text the number 1-800-GAMBLER. So let's start looking at this baseball slate now. And just in general, Neil, we haven't had very many main slates with the Coors Field game. Yeah. So I'm kind of curious, as we start to look at some of the pitching options, how is this slate overall informed, or how are your lineups informed by the fact that there is a Coors Field game? Like, is this something that's changing the pitchers you're targeting? Are you trying to get overweight to the Coors Field game, underweight? Just in general, that's going to be the most overarching thoughts people have on the slate is this Coors Field game with a lot of ownership. But how is it generally impacting your lineups?
Yeah, so as usual, I'm probably going to try to get underweight to the Coors game. It is St. Louis in Colorado, such a smash spot, priced fairly well, but they're projected for 22.4% ownership. The Cardinals, we have them the top stack 20% of the time. So it's like, man, they look so good. 20% chance to be in the top stack on a slate this size is pretty nuts. So hard to really full fade St. Louis. I'll have some. I'll probably be underweight to the field. As far as which pitchers I get to, that's a really interesting question. So I haven't really started running my lineups yet, but we only have one pitcher priced above 10,000 in Max Scherzer. So I still think you can probably play. That kind of makes it harder. Like it's harder to fade the pitchers or the bats because you can get to both. You can play lineups with Max Scherzer, I would imagine, with both Max Scherzer and a full card stack. I'll have to look and see if that is actually true. But given the price tags, like we don't have anybody up at 12,000 or something, given the relatively easy price tags on across the board, both bats and pitchers, it makes it harder to fade than it would be if you kind of had to make more concessions.
So I don't want to spoil the lead too much because we're going to be talking, more about stacks later. But I do think it's so pertinent for the slate and all of the ownership going here. I'm fairly underweight to the field in terms of Cardinals and Rockies stacks. However, I'm getting to a lot of these players as one-offs. And I do think that is something that at least is going to differentiate my lineups a little bit is I have some lower owned stacks in play, and that's going to be paired with some of the higher owned individual bats. And, for baseball, you don't need every single player to be contrarian to make a good GPP or a lower owned lineup. Like if you have a stack that's fairly low owned, it's okay if you have some other hitters that are also popular in it. And we see this a lot with core slates, particularly if you guys look at our tools, the top stacks tool in particular, is that a lot of times you get a Coors Field game and a team that has a high implied team total, like the Cardinals, they're projected for 22.5% ownership as a team right now on DraftKings. It's a lot. It's very hard to be overweight to that number, at least for me in my process, how I build lineups. But with me, I'm cool with getting to some lower owned stacks that are, 2-3%, and then mixing in some of those Coors Field bats. So that is what I think a lot of my lineups are going to ultimately end up looking like. We're still waiting on some final lineups. And also for FanDuel purposes, not only are the Cardinals 19.4% on, you also got the Angels at 19.3% ownership as a team, as a stack. So let's start talking about some of the pitchers now. And you mentioned it. There aren't that many pay up options as far as pitching goes, Neil. We've got, Max Scherzer on the slate. We've got you, Darvish, but nobody who's priced really all that exorbitantly. You got Scherzer 10-4 on DK, Julio Urias 9-4, Castillo 9-6. Are you paying up for any of these pitchers all that often? And if you are, do you have a favorite of the spend ups?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'll be paying up quite a bit on pitchers. We just have so many of the top pitchers. Like if you just look at the top pitchers tool, the pitchers who make it in there, the top odds of anybody is Max Scherzer at 10,400, Julio Urias number 2, 9,400, Luis Castillo number 3, 9,600. So some of the best pitchers on the board are these pay up options. So yeah, I think that there's a good chance that I'm going to be paying up quite a bit. I like, Logan Webb, Zach Gallen look really good at low 7,000. So I'm not going to be exclusively playing up a pitcher. But I am, we've talked about it a good amount on shows that I'm generally more willing to eat the chalk. And I think that's true of all of us, all of the analysts here. We're more willing to eat the chalk at pitcher than at bats, just because pitcher is so much more projectable than bats are. There's more events for a pitcher than, there's 4 at bats, 5 at bats, typically for bats. So typically more projectable at pitcher. So I'm just going to, I set a cap on all pitchers today, which I know not everybody is. I set a cap at 50% on my pitchers today, and I'm going to get to a good amount of just the pitchers who do project the best, because again, it's easier to fit them in with the bats being relatively inexpensive. None of these stacks are crazy over the top expensive. So yeah, currently I just ran my first crunch. I got to Julio Urias at 44%, Zach Gallen 39%. I got Logan Webb 35%, Max Scherzer up at 30%, Luis Castillo at 30%. So, a few of my higher owned pitchers are those really expensive guys.
Okay. Good to get that kind of knowledge as we start going into it. And then, unless I missed, did you say who your most rostered spend up option is there?
At pitcher, yeah. So currently it would be Julio Urias.
Okay, so for me, it is Max Scherzer at the moment, but I also don't have all that much exposure to the high end of the pitchers. It's not really a place that I got a ton of exposure to. I got not like all the way down at like super bargain bin pitchers, like not any of the sub 6K Coors Field pitchers, but there are some other cheap ones I got to, and we'll talk about them a little bit more as we go. But once we start to get into the mid-range, the pitcher who I ended up getting the most to in this price tier, and kind of surprised he's not picking up more ownership just based on how easy the matchup is, Andrew Heaney. So Heaney last year was really, really good. He didn't pitch deep into a lot of games, but the strikeout stuff was fantastic. Incredibly easy matchup for him today as well, taking on the Kansas City Royals. The Royals have the second worst, it's small sample sizes, but still, the Royals have the second worst WRC plus in all of baseball right now. Only the Tigers have been worse. In addition to that, they strike out a lot. They've got one of the, I think it's the 6th worst strikeout rate in baseball. So I view this as a very positive matchup for Andrew Heaney, yet he's not one of the more popular pitchers on the slate. Now, it's not like he's unowned, right? He's 21% owned over on DraftKings. On FanDuel, we've got Heaney projected for 13% ownership, but there's still a lot of pitchers that are more popular than him. I think this is a really high upside spot for a pitcher we've seen have really good strikeout stuff. So I'm getting to Heaney at a pretty good clip. He's one of my most rostered pitchers. Is he somebody that you're getting to as well?
Yeah, so in my first run of crunches that I just ran, I got to 0 shares of Heaney, which is something that I am going to adjust. I don't often adjust projections to get to more or less of players. I think that this is actually a spot that I will, though, because I'm with you. I mean, it's Heaney is such a boom bust pitcher. When you get him in a great spot and he's at 22% ownership, like he's not getting crazy ownership, it's hard not to want to have a good amount of Heaney. How do we have him in the top pitchers tool? Yeah, we got him at 22% ownership. I guess just a 15% chance of being a top 2 pitcher, 14% chance of being a top 2 guy. So he does have negative leverage in the top pitchers tool, but we just know the upside is so high for Andrew Heaney that I think that this is one of those spots where, sometimes we want the safety of some of our pitchers, like a Max Scherzer feels relatively safe here. I guess not really against San Diego, but sometimes we have pitchers where we're targeting more the safety of pitchers. Like even if he's not going to be top 2 that often, he's probably going to get you to 23, 24 fantasy points pretty frequently. But Andrew Heaney is a guy that I think at 7,900, it wouldn't shock anybody to see him get to like 35 fantasy points here on DraftKings. So I'm willing to go there, even if the safety isn't there with Andrew Heaney.
Yeah. So that's, and to me, like, I mean, he was pretty damn good last year. I'm going to pull up Heaney's stats just so I could read it off and have it in front of me. And he's been a pitcher in the past who's certainly been inconsistent. He gives up runs at times. And it's kind of funny because the way that DFS works for baseball, you could have a pitcher that has a fairly decent floor, even if it is somebody who gives up runs. If they have, a high strikeout rate like Andrew Heaney has and is capable of offsetting some of the runs he allows with strikeouts. So I understand he was absolute dog shit in his first start of the year, right? He went 2 2/3 innings, gave up a bunch of runs. So if you're just looking at his numbers for this year, 23.63 ERA doesn't look all that great. I'll admit that. But look at his numbers from last year, 3.1 ERA, 3.39 expected ERA, but most importantly to me, 35.5% K rate. So you're putting him in a positive matchup against the Kansas City Royals, modest ownership. He's one of my favorite mid-range targets on the entire slate as far as pitchers go. Now, you said that he was somebody on your initial run you weren't really getting to, Neil. Is there a different mid-range pitcher you're getting to more of than Heaney?
Yeah, so I'm getting to a good amount of Logan Webb. Who else am I getting to? I boosted my Heaney to get to a little bit more there. But yeah, I'm getting to a good amount of Logan Webb, Zach Gallen. What's Darvish? Darvish is low 8s, right? So I'm getting to a bit of Darvish as well. But in general, Logan Webb, Zach Gallen, the top like mid-range pitchers that I'm going to. Now I'm mixing in Andrew Heaney and you, Darvish, if you consider him in that group as well.
Okay. Yeah. So was there, of that group, who's the one you got to the most of in your crunches?
Logan Webb, I believe. Let me double check here. Well, so now it's Andrew Heaney. I might cut back a little bit from where I got to, but yeah, it's initially it was Logan Webb. That's probably where I'm going to end up being. Although against the Dodgers, I'm a little bit skeptical if I want to go there. Let me take a look. Where am I going to end up? Yeah, it still might be Logan Webb.
Okay. I mean, let's see, what's the current ownership on Webb and some of the leverage numbers? By the way, we just got the Washington Nationals lineup in. So Logan Webb, only $7,400. He is projected as one of the most under-owned pitchers on the entire slate in our top pitchers tool. We've got him projected for 11% ownership on DraftKings. We actually got him with the 4th best odds of being a top 2 scoring pitcher as far as FanDuel goes, particularly on FanDuel. Boy, would I be scared shitless to play Logan Webb at 9,600, but still, we've got him with the 3rd best odds of being the top scoring pitcher on the slate in our data and only 1% projected ownership. So Logan Webb does look good from that standpoint for sure. Let's look at some of the super chats we have. First of all, shout out to Fantasy Guru 76 who gifted out 5 Stokastic YouTube memberships there. So thank you for the support. We appreciate you there. And he also left a super chat, which is who is the best value outfield on FanDuel. So I guess let's give him more than he just gifted out memberships. He left us a super chat. Let's pull up the top batters tool, Neil, and look at some of the best one-off FanDuel hitters for cheap, because he said value. So I assume he's looking, for some semblance of cheap hitters for FanDuel. So pulling this up right here to look at something.
Okay.
Yes, for FanDuel, and he wants outfielders.
Gotcha.
He only asked for one, but we're going to give him more than one. So he gets a little more bang for his buck there. Or we've just made it more confusing for him. So we'll identify one that we like more than the others, and then we'll give some other options as well. But We've got our top batters tool, which really useful way to find one-offs, particularly if you guys are hand building lineups and you want to know who to fill out your lineups with, whether it be DraftKings or FanDuel. We do have projections for each individual hitter, odds for them to homer, odds for them to be the top scoring player at their position, leverage, ownership score, all of that. So let's look at our top projected values on FanDuel. So one that really stands out here that is hard to get away from is Hunter Renfroe going up against Patrick Corbin. By the way, somebody also who I bet to homer today. I don't know if he was in my home run thread because I can't remember who I posted on Twitter, but there was a bunch of home run bets that I placed today. I was posting them in a thread on Twitter. Hunter Renfroe is one of the hitters that I bet to homer today. Great match for him against Patrick Corbin. Hunter Renfroe throughout his career has always crushed left-handed pitching. Also, only $2,800 on FanDuel. We've got him with a nearly 30% chance to homer tonight, Neil, at $2,800 on FanDuel. Really good one-off hitter there. So that's somebody that I really recommend getting behind. And that's going to be my number one choice. If I had to pull another guy, go ahead.
Well, Sam Haggerty, just looking at the top bats tool, I see Sam Haggerty has a 13.1% chance of being one of the top 3 value outfielders on the slate. He's 2,100 in the 6-hole for Seattle. So it looks pretty good here.
Yep. And that's also one that I think makes sense as a lower owned option. But in general, if you just want one, if you don't care about the ownership or anything, my answer is going to be Hunter Renfroe for you, their Fantasy Guru 76, because that is somebody who, like I said, cheap, really well projected in terms of our home run odds. So that's somebody I think we should be getting behind. Let's get back to some of the pitchers and looking through some of the lineups that I have built so far. I want to get your opinion where you're at right now on Bryce Elder. He's also projected for a lot of ownership on DraftKings, super cheap, only $6,600, fairly well-regarded prospect. Another guy, pretty decent matchup against the Cincinnati Reds, a team that should not have a great offense this year. I would expect them to strike out a decent amount. But the thing that really stands out to me about Bryce Elder is if you're paying up for an offense, like let's say you want to go contrarian and pay up for the Dodgers or something like that, there aren't that many cheap pitchers to get to that are in good spots. And Bryce Elder is one of the ones who clearly just stands out given the matchup, the price point. Also somebody who, if you look at his strikeout projections this year, whether it be Zips or Steamer, he's projected to be fairly decent from a strikeout perspective this year, slightly less than a strikeout per inning, but you consider the price, the matchup. Bryce Elder is the punt pitcher, if we're calling him a punt at that price point, that I'm getting the most exposure to. He's popular, but do you think the ownership is warranted based on the data we have?
I do. Yeah, he's 6,600 in a great matchup. More likely to get the win because he plays for the Braves. Just a great spot for Bryce Elder. The ownership is there. 30% projected ownership, 15% chance being a top two pitcher, 24% chance being a top two value. I currently am getting right to what the field has. I have 30% Bryce Elder. I imagine I'm going to get to a good amount. I also think that I might push up some more expensive stacks to try to get to more of them. So I think that there's a good chance that as I do that, I'm just going to get to more Bryce Elder as well.
Yeah, and let me look at some of the lineups that I've built and see, where is it? Like, what stacks is Bryce Elder coming up in? All right, so if I isolate Bryce Elder, coincidentally, he does come up in some of my Braves stacks here. Braves being an expensive team. The Angels, they're really popular. He comes up in some of those stacks. And yeah, I'm underweight to the field on the Coors Field games. I've got him in a Dodgers stack there. Yeah, so mostly some of the pay up offenses, I end up getting to Bryce Elder there. Now, he's the most chalky salary saving option we have at pitcher. Are there any pivot options you see on the low end of the pricing tier that you'd want to roster instead of Bryce Elder? Or is the way to get off Bryce Elder spending up? But any cheap guys that you like as punt options on DK who are not Bryce Elder?
I guess you go to Jose Suarez, getting 15% ownership, 11% chance of being a top two pitcher. He's facing the Nationals, so a great spot for Suarez. Maybe a little bit more safety. Feels a little bit safer with the matchup. I think I'd be more inclined to go, all the way up to Zach Gallen, Logan Webb more often because they're not that much more expensive than Bryce Elder. So I don't think that I'm pivoting directly to the same price range necessarily. Yeah, I don't think there's anybody cheaper than Bryce Elder that I would rather play than that I find to be a really attractive pivot off of him. Jose Suarez only $300 more is I think a viable pivot there. Certainly like, just going up to Zach Gallen, Logan Webb as well. Yeah, I guess you could go to Zach Greinke. Like if I had $5,800 left in a lineup at pitcher and I was not playing a Texas stack, I'd be totally fine going to a Zach Greinke. I guess I'd say that as well. But yeah, no pivots that I love below or at or below the $6,600 price tag.
Yeah, and if you guys have any questions, throw them into Discord and we could answer them. Yeah, so for me, if I had that amount of salary left, and I would rebuild the lineup to create more salary. That's how I would go. I don't feel great about any of these cheap guys who are cheaper than Bryce Elder. Let me see if there's anybody that I do get exposure to. So Drew Smiley is 6,200. I don't have him in line, 6,200 on FanDuel, on DraftKings. The price point on any of these guys cheaper. Yeah, I don't really have exposure to anybody who's cheaper than Bryce Elder at 6,600. He's kind of the floor price for me in terms of what I'm doing at pitcher. Is there anybody else who you're looking at as a contrarian option you do want to get exposure to as a pitching play today?
Any price range?
Could be any price range because we've talked about a lot of the chalk guys, talked about some of the players we have the most exposure to. But is there anything else you're seeing on the board at pitcher that you are overweight to or that you do like getting to?
I don't know that I'm getting that far off the board. So I think primarily I'm playing just a lot of Scherzer, Urias, Castillo, Webb, Gallen, Darvish, Heaney, Elder. The bottom half, just looking at the top pitches tool, I'm not really getting too much of the bottom half here. Let me see if there is somebody. Make a case.
The other thing too is I just find it to be largely unnecessary. So if you were somebody who's let's say that you just can't go without the St. Louis Cardinals. You can't go without the Los Angeles Angels. Any of these really chalky teams, I'm underweight to them. But if you are just convinced these are can't miss stacks, that's maybe where I'd be more inclined to go to one of these super, super risky, unknown pitchers. If I'm already underweight to the field on Coors, like I don't need to go underweight to the field on Coors and then be like, hey, I'm playing Zach Greinke too. You know, like
right.
I feel like my lineups are different enough by the nature of what I'm doing that it just kind of became unnecessary to go to some of those really risky, unowned, cheap pitching options. That's to me where I landed on not having them.
Yep, I like that call. I think it's really unnecessary to go to anybody who's completely unowned there. I think it's funny, just looking at the top stat or the top pitchers tool, it's really just the top of the board, like the top, I don't know, 10 or so all look really good to me. And I don't think I'm actually going below there today.
Yeah, let's see. Who is like I said, the cheapest I have is Bryce Elder. I don't really have exposure to any of these pitchers that are sub 10% owned. So nothing else to add. Anything else you want to bring up at pitcher?
I don't think so.
All right. So with that in mind, let's look at some of our favorite bets of the day based on the projections we have in MLB Bet Pro. So if you guys have been using NBA Bet Pro this year, good news. We have MLB Bet Pro now, but also it's in addition to NBA Bet Pro. So this comes with both. And then hopefully in the future, we're going to be adding more sports to this and just Bet Pro, right? So if you have NBA Bet Pro, you also get MLB Bet Pro. We've got the NBA playoffs coming up. And what you are going to find in Bet Pro is our top projected bets across every different sports book and our best bets, which are going to tell you what the best bet is and also what the best line is at all the different books. If you're somebody who only plays at one book or two books, we also have tabs where you could sort by the best DraftKings bets, best FanDuel bets, best BetMGM bets. And if you haven't checked out Bet Pro yet, it is totally free for 7 days. We got a link you guys could use below. It's going to get you 7 days of it totally for free. No risk to yourself at all, just to check out the different data we have on the paywall. And if you like it and you want to stick around, then you can re-up after those 7 days are there. But for now, 7 days, totally free. And I'm looking right now at some of our best projected bets of the day. And let's start with some of the strikeouts here, Neil, just because we're just talking about some of our favorite pitchers. And let's see if there's anything here that really correlates with what we like for DFS. And not necessarily in terms of the pitchers we liked in DFS. One thing that is pretty notable, though, Jose Suarez, his over-under for strikeouts is 4.5. That's right around where we have him projected. So this is a bet that's going to win actually exactly 50% of the time. But it's plus 128. So I'm looking at Jose Suarez, the under, being a good bet. Best line is available on FanDuel, plus 128, because it's a coin flip bet that we're getting plus 128 odds on. So Jose Suarez, that's a strikeout prop that's sticking out to me. Do you have Bet Pro pulled up right now, Neil? If not,
I do have it pulled up.
Okay. Are there any props here, whether it be a strikeout prop, a home run pick, that are standing out to you as you look at our data?
Yeah, so I keep hearing that these strikeout props tend to be a little bit inefficient, and this is where I'm most inclined to go, I think. So I think that I'm going to be right there with you. I do like this Sandy Alcantara under 6.5 strikeouts. Looks really good to me. We haven't projected for 5.5 strikeouts. So I like that number on Sandy Alcantara, taking the under on 6.5 strikeouts.
Yep, and he's somebody that, he was great last year, obviously. He won the Cy Young. He was as good as it gets. But he's historically never been a great strikeout pitcher. And a lot of his counting stats last year were kind of contingent on the fact that he consistently was going super deep into games. I'm not exactly sure how replicable that is if he's going to be somebody who just throughout the years regularly going 8-9 innings and starts. And if he doesn't, we're certainly going to see some of those aggregate total strikeouts drop. So we've got the under projected well there. And I agree with it. I like shorting Sandy Alcantara a little bit to open up the year here. So I think that's one that stands out. And then also, I want to look at home runs. Everybody loves dongs. I hear that all the time.
Yeah, everybody loves dongs.
Everybody. So I want to look at some of our home run bets. I have a bunch that I placed. If you guys want to check out my Twitter thread, I gave out some of my favorite home run bets of the day. But I also want to pull up what the current numbers are, because some of them might have changed. And so this has gone down a little bit over the course of the day, but there are some individual Cardinals, Rockies hitters that are projecting really well for home runs. And something I've noticed this year from just some of the bets I've placed, for whatever reason, the home run market's been pretty inefficient for some of these Coors Field games. We've seen a lot of players project well. So we've got a handful of these guys: Nolan Gorman, Alec Burleson, Wilson Contreras, all from the St. Louis Cardinals as plus EV projected home run bets. So some guys there that we could take advantage of at Coors Field that are projected to have pretty good odds to homer. Nolan Gorman, for instance, we got him with a 20% chance to homer, but his odds are plus 425. So that is good for a 5% expected ROI. Are there any players you'd like to give out as a home run pick as a good bet based on some of the data in BetPro here?
Well, I'm very much reliant on BetPro when I'm making props bets. We like the over on 0.5 home runs for Nico Horner. Nico Horner looks like a solid home run bet in our tools. It's pretty interesting to me. I wasn't expecting Nico Horner to look so good, but we have it. It doesn't win all that often, but the juice there, what would it, 2,200?
22 to 1.
22 to 1. So given the juice on Nico Horner, I think that looks like a really solid bet, even if it's not a straight up, like you're not taking that, 50-50 odds, but at 22 to 1. Yeah, I'll take that.
And these are the kind of bets where, over time, you never expect to win a 22 to 1, but if you've got a 22 to 1 bet that wins 5% of the time, like we've got projected here, you're coming out ahead over the course of time. So that's actually our number one projected EV bet of the day, even though it only wins 5% of the time because the odds are so long. So Nico Horner, 22 to 1, that is a pretty good looking bet based on the data we have here. And once again, if you guys want to check out BetPro, which includes baseball and basketball data, click on the link below. 7 days totally for free. And you guys will get some good access to bets for the NBA play-in game, and then also for the NBA play-in games and all the baseball upcoming. Scale of 1 to 10, though, Neil, for tomorrow. What is your confidence level in the Minnesota Timberwolves winning? What would you give their odds at?
I saw that. I think I saw 538 has them at 34%, but I just know that they're going to really buckle down here and screw the Lakers. I'm going 67%.
All right. So the inverse. So you said, what was it? 538 had it at
34. Yeah. So basically the inverse. That's true. Yeah. I'll go 66%.
Yeah. Just go 66. Take the inverse. Jordan disagrees. Jordan, you're confidently taking the Lakers tomorrow?
Maybe they'll end up fighting some walls. Who knows?
Are they going to let Rudy Gobert be with the team, or because I know he's suspended? Is he staying home?
Travel with the team.
There we go. They're just keeping him away.
He doesn't provide anything in the locker room. He doesn't block shots this year. He's just worst trade of all time.
So the other thing too is Kyle Anderson, based on what we've heard about the story, Kyle Anderson was kind of the one who initiated this.
Sure.
Kyle Anderson, obviously Rudy Gobert escalated it to a point that should not happen when your teammates on the same team. Although we did see it in the Clippers game as well with Mason Plumlee and Bones Highland getting into it on the bench, because nobody really gives a shit about those players. But we had Kyle Anderson, the timeout, they go to the bench. Kyle Anderson goes up to Rudy Gobert way out of pocket and says, "Yo, dude, why don't you block more shots?" To which he said, "Why don't you grab more rebounds?" And then he punched him. So
Did you see the story that there was a Timberwolves beat writer who was writing a story about Kyle Anderson's style as a teammate and how he's very blunt and he just says what's on his mind. He can be pretty harsh sometimes. And Rudy Gobert was quoted it as, "Yeah, but I just know that's how he is and I love him and you just can't take it personally." So this is a story that I think a quote he had gotten the day before from Rudy Gobert.
Oh, no.
And then of course he attacks Kyle Anderson. Yeah, brutal.
And the other thing too is Rudy Gobert, because he's got this wingspan, like he punched him from 15 feet away. Yeah. He could not have been further away when he hit him. You see that, it's like, boy, Rudy Gobert could have been a boxer just based on the wingspan. He could have been jabbing guys up from the other side of the ring. So that was one thing I was like, well, look at the reach on him to be able to reach out and hit. Now it was soft, right? Hit him in the solar plexus, but still, there's quite the reach that we had there on Rudy Gobert. Let's talk about some stacks.
Yep.
And once again, any questions you guys have, throw them into us. And what are you doing with the Coors Field game, Neil? Starting with the Cardinals, because the Cardinals are super popular. Currently the most popular team on DraftKings, most popular team on FanDuel, right around 20% ownership on FanDuel, 22% ownership on DK. Relative to those kind of projections in terms of ownership, are you going to be overweight to the field on the Cardinals, even with the field, or underweight?
Underweight for sure on full stacks. I will have a good number of secondary stack Cardinals. I'll have some one-offs from the Cardinals, but really there's no way to build out a contrarian Cardinals stack. Just looking across the lineup, the lowest ownership projection we have on anybody from the bats for the Cardinals is Dylan Carlson at 12%. Everybody else is 17+% projected ownership. So it's really impossible to build a contrarian stack with the Cardinals. I'll still have them in as a secondary stack as one-offs with some lower owned stacks. But yeah, I'm going to be underweight to the field on full stacks for sure.
And then are you going to be like me where even though you're underweight to field on full stacks, are you going to be playing a lot of these guys as one-offs?
I imagine so. Like I set for my bats, I'm setting a cap at 30% on any bats and just letting it, and I'm doing 5-2 stacks. I would imagine that I get a good number of St. Louis bats just as one-offs in those secondary stacks. So yeah, I think that'll be a good portion of my exposure to the Cardinals will just be, 2-man stacks and then maybe some one-offs.
Yeah, so I want to rerun my lineups with just some more of the official lineups. And I think we have pretty much all of them now, just refreshing to make sure that's the case. Any lineups that we are currently missing, or do we? Yeah, we've got all the lineups now. Do you have some lineups built in front of you, by the way, Neil?
I do have some lineups built in front of me. I will be adjusting because I've got a take that I want to go over at one point that I have not adjusted for yet, but I do have some lineups in front of me.
I was just curious to know if you have lineups built in front of you. Who are some of the Cardinals players you were getting to most often as one-offs?
Yeah, so with my cap at 30%, I got to 30% Paul Goldschmidt. I got to 26% Wilson Contreras. Makes sense. You got to fill that catcher spot. 26% Alec Burleson. 17% Tommy Edman. I actually got a good amount of all of them as one-offs or as secondary stacks. 17% Nolan Gorman, 17% Jordan Walker. So across the board, I actually did get only 9% Nolan Arenado. But for the most part, revenge game for Nolan Arenado. But I did get, a good amount of all of these bats, just not really in full stacks here.
Just because I'm very far removed, as you are yourself as well, Neil, from the narrative street. Is that something people are doing in baseball? I'm curious for chat. Is anybody building lineups based on, hey, this guy used to play for this team, therefore he's going to be like, what's the logic? Like he's just going to hit home runs more often because he's going against a former team. I'm curious if that's something people actually do in baseball.
Yeah, I'm sure people do it. Probably not that many, but I'm sure it's done.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll hear from chat fairly soon. But I've got lineups rerunning now with all of the most recent lineups in, and I'm going to sort by just the Cardinals, and I'll tell you guys the individual Cardinals hitters that I got the most exposure to. And yeah, number one is Wilson Contreras and Paul Goldschmidt, kind of on a tier of their own in terms of the amount that I got to them when I was running lineups. Then there's the next tier, which is Nolan Arenado and Nolan Gorman. Nolan correlation, right? I mean, if you're going to play guys,
Nolan correlation,
clearly what's better than Nolan, right? I mean, that's
my brother's name is Nolan. One of my boss's names is Nolan. So, gotta love Nolans.
Yeah. Gotta be sharp if you're building around Nolan there. So the other players, then, so it's tiers, right? So towards the top, Contreras, Goldschmidt, then Nolan Arenado and Nolan Gorman together. And then players I got less of that I'm also underweight to the field to, but popped up a little bit in one-offs. It was Jordan Walker for me, then Tommy Edman, and then Alec Burleson. And those ones, much less than the other ones. And then I didn't really get to Brendan Donovan, even though he's leading off for them. Didn't get too much of Dylan Carlson either. And once again, I mean, you got Brendan Donovan leading off, but just didn't end up popping up in a lot of my lineup. So the ones, like I said, priorities, Wilson Contreras, Paul Goldschmidt, but I mean, the field is prioritizing them as well. But want to let you guys know where I end up standing with the Cardinals and how I got to them as one-offs throughout my lineups. But the other really chalky team that we have today, Neil, and let me make sure this is still the case and refresh the ownership to make sure nothing has changed. The Los Angeles Angels were projecting for about 20% ownership on FanDuel, 15% on DraftKings last ownership update. And yep, still the same as I rerun it right now. So relative to the ownership on the Angels, right? We just talked about how popular the Cardinals are, a team that we're coming underweight to. How about the Angels? Is this another team they're going to be underweight to? Or do you think the ownership is more warranted in this spot?
Yeah, it looks, I mean, I wouldn't say more warranted because like St. Louis has the best odds of being the top stack on the board by a wide margin. So like it is the ownership on St. Louis is warranted. But I think that I will be closer to the field on the Angels because, we have them with a 14% chance of being the top stack, 14% projected ownership. So I do have a ton of the Angels. I've got a good amount of Mike Trout currently. I guess outside of Trout, I don't have, I guess 22% Taylor Ward. I've got a good amount. Yeah. Okay. I don't have any right at the top with Trout, but I do still have a good amount. Taylor Ward, Anthony Rendon, Hunter Renfroe, mixing in a good amount of the Angels here.
Yeah. So the Angels, as far as a stack goes, I'm closer to the field on the, like, slightly underweight, but closer to the field on the Angels as a stack than I am on the Cardinals. Just easier when they're only projected for 14% ownership. We also have them with 13.6% top stack odds. So if we're building out a bunch of lineups, I think this is an easier team to at least be close to the field to in terms of overall ownership there. And also, Mike Trout is my most rostered outfielder right now. I think this is a really good spot for Mike Trout. Makes a whole lot of sense to get there. The other thing too with Mike Trout, by the way, another guy who I placed a bet on for a home run today. I got him at plus 310, I think was the line over at DraftKings, was the best one available. Not sure if that number is still out there, but it is a bet that I like quite a bit. Is Mike Trout is still, to me, the best player in baseball when healthy. The problem with Mike Trout is he's not healthy all that often. If there's ever a point in time where you're going to catch Trout healthy, it's in week 2, week 3 of the baseball regular season as we're getting going. So Mike Trout, to me, all systems go right now. I love getting to him as a pay up and is my most rostered individual hitter from the Angels. Are you getting to a decent amount of Trout as a one-off as well?
Yeah, Trout, I have my cap set again at 30%. I got to 30% Trout. He is my most owned batter.
All right, so let's talk about some of the lower owned stacks then. Neil, are there any teams that are not projected for that much ownership? Do you really like as a contrarian stack?
Yeah, so a team that, you know, if you've watched my streams, I've been doing solo streams where I've been talking about this kind of experiment that I'm running. Not really experiment, but something that I'm trying out early in the season where I'm not 100% going on just projections, is bats against ground ball pitchers. So pitchers that you don't normally want to be playing against because of the rule changes in baseball. Every rule change, as far as I can think, every rule change that happened this summer hurts ground ball pitchers, and then of course helps bats going up against ground ball pitchers. And you look at the 2022 leaders in terms of ground ball rate. Logan Webb is number 3. He 57% ground ball rate, which of course that's great. It's a good thing to be a ground ball pitcher in general if you can suppress power. Going up against the Dodgers, though, getting no ownership. I'm always going to like the Dodgers when they're not getting a ton of ownership. And we have the Dodgers here at 3% projected ownership today, 4.2% chance of being a top stack. So this is something that in general, it's a narrative that I'm not really playing into unless, you know, I already like them. And when I say I already like them, I mean the top stacks tool already likes the stack. So when the top stacks tool already likes the stack, the top stacks tool is already telling me the Dodgers are a little bit under owned. And I'm not convinced that Vegas has necessarily accounted for the rules changes, you know, to the full extent yet. That, you know, so maybe the Dodgers have a little bit better odds of really going off against Logan Webb, even though he's a good pitcher, he's a good ground ball pitcher. It's just a little bit more likely that they're going to get on base at a slightly better rate, just because every one of those pop plays with the bags being a little bit bigger, it's going to help them out a little bit. So I do really like the Dodgers at 3% ownership. They're going to be one of my biggest focuses here. It's in San Francisco, so tough spot in San Francisco against Logan Webb, obviously tough spot, but the Dodgers, you know, they can bat against anybody. They can kill it. So when you add in the fact that Logan Webb maybe is hurt a little bit by all the rule changes in baseball, just makes me like the Dodgers that much more. So I am going to be focused a little bit on the Dodgers here, trying to get well above the field, actually.
Yeah, no, I'm on the same page as you. It's a team I get exposure to. And I think it's interesting too about what could some of the factors be of the rule changes. Just, you know, in general, there should be more offense, right? I mean, teams can't shift. They can't play specifically against particular hitters. And then also there's the pitch count. That's going to affect the pitchers more. That's going to impact the hitters for sure. Something else that I've kind of thought about that kind of goes in that same vein, Neil, is some of the left-handed hitters who, you know, have had issues where it's like, all right, if you're Joey Gallo, and I know that we don't have the Twins playing today, as you mentioned, they've already lost today. But think about somebody like Joey Gallo. And one of the reasons a lot of people are projecting him to potentially break out and get back to the type of power hitter he was a couple of years ago is because teams can't shift against him as egregiously. Now we're still seeing teams are putting, you know, the right fielder in shallow right field and move the outfield over. But since teams can't be as aggressive shifting, it does free him up to be able to just pull the ball a little bit more often as well, which could ultimately lead to more home runs for some of these pull hitters as well, where they wouldn't have in the past. So I think that somebody like Logan Webb, who's been a heavy ground ball pitcher, I agree with you. I don't know what the results are going to be. We don't know. The rule changes are all new, but it does stand to reason it's going to hurt ground ball pitchers.
Yeah, exactly. And Logan Webb, one of the better ground ball pitchers in the entire MLB. And it just, it just adds a little bit more volatility, adds a little bit more upside, because pitchers also, like, it wears them out a little bit as more batters get on base. It wears the pitcher out a little bit more. Of course, it frustrates them a little bit. Hard to quantify that, but I'm sure it has a psychological impact. Seeing a Bam Bam play that they get on the base as opposed to being out. It's a confidence killer for pitchers, I would imagine. So it's hard to factor in that kind of thing, but I think that there's just a lot of incremental things that all help the bats, that help bats against ground ball pitchers. So I really like the Dodgers, and I would have liked them last year, even before the rule changes. The Dodgers are a team that can do it against anybody, and we see that in the top stacks tool. But it just makes me like them that much more, that they do have rule changes that maybe make it a little bit more likely that they can get to Logan Webb early and get to the bullpen.
Yeah, so two teams last year that would pretty frequently play whenever they were low owned: the Dodgers and the Houston Astros. Two teams that a lot of times they'll be really expensive, so they'll be hard to stack up. But for today, when we're talking about some of the pitchers, it's not like we have all these crazy amount of high-end pitchers to spend up for today. There isn't a massive opportunity cost at pitcher for paying up for an offense. So I'm with you. We've got 4% top stack odds on the Dodgers, 2% projected ownership. This is a team that's not difficult to get overweight to. If you guys play 20 lineups and one of them is a Dodger stack, you're 2.5x the field on the Dodgers in terms of ownership relative to the field. So I think you guys should be mixing in at least one Dodger stack today. They're expensive, but once again, if I look at some of my lineups, because I am more than double the field on the Dodgers, let's see, who are the pitchers I get to with the Dodgers? Yeah, so if you make a Dodger stack, I mean, you could play with Bryce Elder, Zach Allen, fits together fairly easily. So that's a team that for sure I think is a good one to stack up. The Los Angeles Dodgers, despite the fact that they're expensive today, still a team that I think makes some sense to get to there. Is there a cheap offense, Neil? So the Dodgers, really good contrarian offense. I agree with you as a spend up. We could pivot off of the Cardinals and get to the Dodgers, pivot off the Angels and get to the Dodgers. Is there a cheap offense that you like for low ownership?
Yes. I mean, you can get the Rangers against Zach Greinke, look pretty good in Texas. 8.3% projected ownership on the stack. 10.5% chance to be in the top value stack, only 6.2% chance to be in the top overall stack, but a little bit of positive leverage just in terms of value stack. So point per dollar, odds of being the top point per dollar stack. I'd say the Rangers are probably one that I'm more interested in. Milwaukee, I mean, that's going to be a scumdacker special for me. You can play Zach Allen in your non-Zach Allen lineups. You can play some Milwaukee, always have some power, projected for just 4% ownership. Maybe that's the right answer. Milwaukee with 3.9% projected ownership, 9.3% chance to be in the top value stack, 5.5% chance to be in the top stack overall. I guess I would say Milwaukee is probably the top in terms of cheap stacks for me.
Yeah, so it's interesting. I really like Zach Allen as a pitching option today. We talked about him before at pitchers. You had brought him up. But as far as offenses go, he's a popular pitcher who had a massive outlier year last year. Gallen was incredible, finished with a 2.54 ERA, 3.17 expected ERA down the stretch of the year. He had that stretch of, I'm trying to remember, it was like 7-8 starts where he didn't allow runs. He had it was 58 innings in a row. He set an MLB record for consecutive innings where he didn't allow an earned run. But he hasn't been that guy in the past. You go back 2 years ago, 2021, Zach Allen, 4.3 ERA, 3.95 expected ERA. That's generally where he's been. He's been a guy that has underlying numbers that would suggest he should have an ERA in the high 3 to low 4 range. I look at projections for him this year. Zips has him at a 3.56 ERA, Steamer 3.87. The bat actually has Gallen projected for a 4.12 ERA this year. I think there is opportunity for regression for Gallen, and given how popular he's getting, once again, he's going to be one of my most popular pitchers, but I do like the leverage that we could get on the Brewers on the other side. And I've actually been playing around with the idea of potentially making the Brewers my single entry stack today. I haven't quite figured out which team it is I'm going to roll with in single entry, but I do like the leverage we're getting on Milwaukee. They project extremely well for us as an individual stack. And it's one of those things too. There's a pitcher in Zach Allen who I think there's a wide range of outcomes with him this year. He could be as good as he was last year. It's possible. I don't think it's the most likely scenario though. I think he's probably more likely to be somewhere in between where he was the last couple of years. Probably better than he was in 2021, a little worse than he was in 2022. But just the fact that there is this wide range of outcomes and everybody's just kind of assuming he's going to be really good out of the gate, super popular today. And then in addition to that, you got almost no ownership going to the Brewers. I do like that as a team that I get exposure to in large field tournaments. And then, like I said, even potentially in single entry fields where there isn't going to really be ownership there at all on the Milwaukee Brewers. Are there any individual hitters as you look through your lineups that you're getting to more frequently from Milwaukee?
Yeah, I'm running another crunch right now, so let me see what happens.
And then we also got a super chat from Jorge who wants to know, because you already answered my classic question. He just wants to know which stacks and pitchers will I try to avoid as much as I can today. So we'll get to that super chat in a second, just something to ruminate on while you're looking through your lineups. And for me, if I look at the Brewers, one thing that's a little annoying is I had a lot of Jesse Winker exposure earlier, and then he wasn't in the lineup, which obviously makes him not somebody to play anymore. But as far as an individual hitters goes, I'm double the field on Willy Adames, double the field on Rowdy Tellez. I'm well overweight to the field on Brian Anderson. Top to bottom, I'm overweight to every single team. Every single player on this team. The priorities, though, being Willy Adames and Rowdy Tellez towards the top of the lineup. You know, these are guys who are like 2-3% owned for the most part of this Brewers offense. And I'm getting to this team 10% as a stack. So Milwaukee, good contrarian stack. I'm on board with you, Neil.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, same players for me. So I'm getting to a good amount of Rowdy Tellez, William Contreras. I'm actually getting to a good amount of Garrett Mitchell in there as well in the 6 hole. But then, you know, a little drop down to some Willy Adames, Christian Yelich for me.
So let's talk about Jorge's super chat now, because Jorge asked us, just to reiterate, so you guys hear what the question was. He asks, which stacks and pitchers will we try to avoid as much as we can today? So if we look at the popular pitchers, who is a chalky pitcher that you are currently underweight to? Let me pull up the pitcher ownership, refresh to make sure that it is the most recent one. For me, unless it's changed, it was Julio Urias is one that I was underweight to. Urias projected for 24% ownership. And to me, if I'm paying up for a pitcher and I have the space, I'm more apt to get to Scherzer than I am to Urias. Another thing, too, is I worry about how deep Urias is going to go into games to open up the year. We've seen that from the Dodgers in previous years, how they manage workloads, and they're pretty cautious with pitchers really throughout the season, but particularly the start of the year, the end of the year. This is always a team that has championship aspirations. And as such, they're pretty cautious with their pitchers. They're a team that always feels pretty confident they're going to be in the playoffs. So the first 2 games of the year for Urias, we haven't seen him work especially deep. 6 innings in each of them. That's generally saw last year. He's kind of capped at 6 innings. It doesn't hurt the floor of him, but the ceiling of Urias definitely gets hurt if he's going to be capped at somewhere around 6 innings. So I'm underweight to the field on Urias. Any pitchers that you are underweight to the field to, per Jorge's question?
Yeah, so I'm underweight to the field on, I'm just sorted by ownership here. And I'm underweight to the field on Bryce Elder a little bit, underweight to the field on Max Scherzer, underweight to the field on Luis Castillo. I actually have 0 Jose Suarez. I'm only playing 23 lineups. I mentioned Jose Suarez as a pitcher that you can get to. I think he's a fine pitcher, but I'm also not forcing him into my lineup. So he's probably my biggest fade today. He's at 14.5% ownership. So I don't fade any chalk pitchers typically. Mm-hmm. So I'm not really fading any exactly, but I am underweight to the field on a bunch. And then I actually have 0 Jose Suarez, and I'm fine with it.
Yeah, it's Urias for me. And then we've got some questions in our Discord channel as well. So we'll hit on those in a second. And that is what will close out the show for us. But the other part of Jorge's question also, he wants to know which stacks we're avoiding. You know, it's hard because there aren't really individual stacks I avoid. Like I'm underweight to the field on the Angels, but I'm underweight to the field on the, a little bit underweight to the field on the Angels, but not too underweight. And then I am underweight to the field on the Cardinals as far as stacks go, but I still have a bunch of them as one-offs. Let me see which stack. I mean, I guess just percentage wise, the Cardinals are the team that I'm most underweight to, but it's still a team that I get, 10% exposure to around as a stack. Let me see if I have a better answer when I'm looking at ownership of stacks. Is there any team that stands out to you as one that you're fairly aggressively underweight to?
So I'm only playing 23 lineups today. So I just chose, I found 6 stacks that I like to play. So I'm only playing 6 teams as primary stacks, and the Cardinals are not among them. So I'm going to have a good amount of the individual bats from the Cardinals, but I am I have 0% of the Cardinals as full stack. So they're the chalkiest team on the slate. They're obviously my most aggressive fade when I have 0 of them in full stacks, but I will still have a good amount in my secondary 2-man stacks and then as one-offs.
Yeah, I'm underweight to them, but I still have stacks of them. So I can't really say a team that I'm not exactly running away from playing them, especially when I have a lot of them as one-offs, but still one that I'm underweight to as far as stacks go. Now let's talk about some of the questions in our Discord channel, and that'll do it for the show today. By the way, if you guys want access to all of the tools that we have for baseball over at Stokastic.com, we have an offer, MLB 9 for 9, 9 days, $9. So all of our baseball tools that Neil and I have been talking about, the top batters tool, top pitchers tool. I love the top stacks. So top stacks tool is probably my favorite tool we have over on the site. Just the odds of each team to be the highest scoring team on the slate, their odds being the top value team. And then we've also got all the ownership projections for the team on the aggregate. And then it'll give you a leverage score to show you how over or under owned each individual team is. So sign up using the link below and you get access to all of that for 9 days for just $9. Good way to start off the baseball season for you guys if you've not used our MLB tools before. But let's answer some of these questions. First, Manny wants to know thoughts on Luis Rengifo to finish an Angels stack. Yeah, so Rengifo, not a type of guy that I'd really be targeting as a one-off, but as far as a stack, like pretty much anybody's viable for me in a stack. It's very rare that I would look at a stack and say I wouldn't play somebody. So Rengifo, as far as a stack, good with me. And then Teely wants to know favorite one-offs. I mean, for me, it's a lot of the Cardinals guys, right? I've got a lot of exposure to Contreras, Paul Goldschmidt as far as one-offs go, Mike Trout being another one. As you look through your lineups here, Neil, is there anybody that you are getting to more frequently as a one-off than maybe as part of a stack?
Yeah, I mean, I'm getting to a ton of Mike Trout as a one-off. I also have him in some stacks as well. I think you can make a case for, I mean, I talked about how much I like the Dodgers. Mookie Betts leading off for the Dodgers. Looks like a very solid option for me. I'm looking at his, I get his stolen bases have fallen off so much. I was wondering if we had maybe seen the stolen bases come back at all for Mookie Betts, but he doesn't have any so far this year, and he's down at just like 10-12 the past several years. So I was hoping to maybe include that as a reason, but leading off for the Dodgers, probably a little bit more likely to get on base with the ground ball rules. I like Mookie Betts as just a contrarian one-off, but yeah, it's going to be Mike Trout, my number one-off from bats. Julio Rodriguez I like quite a bit as a one-off leading off for Seattle. I'd say those are my 2 favorites, Trout and Julio Rodriguez.
All right, no more questions in Discord, no more super chats. That's going to do it for us today, guys. If you're not done yet, do us a big favor, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Shout out to Bet365 who sponsored our show today. I hope all of us make some money. Hope we have some stacks that go off. Good luck today, guys, and we'll be back tomorrow talking about basketball again.